The Beatles followed this Satanist pedophile named Aleister Crowley. And in fact, they even put a picture of Aleister Crowley on the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They put it up in the top left corner. Mussolini had kicked him out, saying he was the wickedest man in the world. You got to get out of Italy.
What if this is just to get attention? It's just all fake. There's no Satan, no devil, no evil.
But the Valley of Ben Hinnom, which is actually a picture of hell itself, when they would have these false gods that they would fry the children on these molting hands that were really hot, and they would have to play drums to drown out the sound of what was going on. Olivia Rodrigo is out there handing out Plan Bs just at her most recent concert.
It's crazy.
Handing out Plan Bs to kill babies. For him, it was his grandmother dressing him up in a dress and then him being molested.
Chad Davidson, you've been a wrestling coach for 15 years, right?
Yep.
You just released your book, Wrestling with Discipleship?
Yep.
As much as I've been told, you have studied Jesus a lot, his
Yes.
life and his resurrection. And a mutual friend of ours told me that he doesn't know a person, a human being on planet Earth who knows more about Jesus than you do.
Oh wow, that's
Is
something.
that true?
I don't know about that. Yeah, but that's quite a compliment. That's really sweet.
So Chad, I would like to talk to you today about wrestling, of course, about kids, about God, about Jesus, and about indoctrination that is happening right now in schools, public schools, private schools, colleges, universities, all that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds great.
We're cool?
I love it.
So I'm a big UFC guy, right? So I started watching UFC in 2010. So prior to that, I was a big movie guy. And there was a movie coming out, The A-Team. And one of the roles was played by Quentin Jackson. And I was like, who? All those, Liam Neeson, all those are actors. Who the hell is this guy? And I'm searching, I'm Googling, he's a UFC fighter. UFC, what is that? I put his name on YouTube and I saw the highlights. What? Like knockouts? Wow. And I fell in love. So since 2010, I'm a big UFC guy. I don't watch any other sports, maybe World Cup like football, which is soccer, because I'm from Europe. That's it. No Olympics, no football, no baseball, NBA, nothing is interested to me, just the UFC. And I remember a few guys, especially DC, Daniel Cormier, right? Other wrestling coaches and the guys that came to UFC from wrestling, all of them were saying that the toughest sport there is that builds your character is wrestling. Khabib, one of the greatest of all time, right? He's a big-time wrestler. And he says the same thing. If you want to build a character, you have to wrestle. How so?
Well, it's really interesting because I've thought about this quite a bit, obviously with my wrestling background. And I realized right away, when it came to other sports, and specifically here in America, football, is typically king. And I played football growing up. I, wore the jersey, was excited to wear my jersey to school on Friday because I had a game Saturday, and you'd see all the other guys from your team wearing the jersey. And that was just like, that's awesome. You get a little glory, everyone's like, oh, he's a football player. And I noticed that right away that kept going in high school as well. Whether somebody was on the football team but never played a single snap, when they won a game on Friday, on Monday, people would be like, hey, great game. As if like, oh man, you must have done something for the team, even if they were just sitting there holding their helmet. But with wrestling, on the other hand, I realized how much work it takes to get so little glory. And we were pretty popular. Our wrestling team was very good when I was in high school. We won multiple championships. I got to be team captain and all that stuff. But I realized right away the glory was totally different because I'll never forget, we had a match and we actually shut out. And in wrestling, a shutout is very different. That's 14 weight classes. That means every one of your guys won the match. It's an embarrassing thing. 84-0, 78-0 if you didn't pin somebody and all that. But
you mean 84 wins, 0 losses?
84-0 is the score. So you win 14 matches and you start pinning everybody, your team gets more points and so forth. And so when I looked at that, I remember one time our best wrestler, and he was my teammate. I knew this was our best wrestler. He was going against another team that wasn't all that great, but they had one guy that was really good. And our best wrestler went against him, and he still won. He just didn't pin him like everyone else did really quickly against their opponents. And so everyone, all of our friends and everybody thought, oh, he just must not be very good. And I'm like, no, he was going against a really good opponent. And he's like, yeah, but he couldn't even pin the guy. Well, it doesn't come that easy. And I started to realize right away, if even our best wrestler, even when he wins, doesn't get that sort of glory and people don't recognize his skill set, it shows you that it really is about just wanting to be the best at your craft. And for a wrestler, you wanting to go against somebody else, put it on the line. You've both been training 5 days a week, for months and months and months, weightlifting, gymnastics. I mean, all the different training methods that we do just to be able to wrestle for 6 minutes. And the truth is, you lay it on the line, and that guy's doing the same thing. And it's always like, how do you have confidence in wrestling? And I always tell the guys, like, you get your confidence not because like I just have a better skill set or this, that, and the other. You are convinced there's no possible way that he bled as much as me, as he sweat as much as me. There's no possible way he worked harder than me. And so that hard work breeds confidence. But it is just one of those sports that it's not a lot of glory. But ultimately, when you go toe to the line, wrestling has a saying that every wrestler knows, and it's called embrace the grind. Because ultimately, if you're just doing it for trophies, you're going to quit. You can't do it just to get first and second and third and all of that. You have to do it loving just the grind of it, the waking up and running when it's freezing outside, the training when you don't really want to, the breaking down of your body, and mentally it just takes you to a place that I've done every sport under the sun. I've played all-star baseball, I did football. You wouldn't tell by my height, but I used to be a very good basketball player growing up, lead scorer in my league and all that fun stuff. And even in MMA, I've even fought, a few amateur MMA fights, thought I was going to be a professional fighter at one point. None of that was compared to the rigors that I went through for wrestling.
Wow. So if you're a basketball player, you just have to show up to the practices and to the game, right? You don't have to watch your diet or the weight, and etc. When you're a fighter, boxer, kickboxer, wrestler, you have to watch your diet. You have to nutrition well, because it all depends on your output. All your weight, you do the weight. How many, you said 14 weight classes?
Yep.
So the weight classes is 4 to 5 pounds apart. Max?
It depends. When it's smaller, there's smaller increments.
Yeah.
So it starts out at 106 pounds, then goes to 113. It's a little random.
Yeah.
But then when you get up into the bigger guys, it's 195, 215, and then 285. So but yeah, typically the weight classes are between 5 and 7 pounds of each other.
But isn't it so? The wrestlers are so psychologically tough because when you wrestle, it's kind of very natural for a human being, especially for men, right? To wrestle. When we're young, we wrestle with our brothers, with our peers, with our friends, like always wrestling. You can punch in the face, but you can freaking wrestle, right? Yeah. So it feels like you're almost, if you defeat a guy with your fists, it's not the same if you defeat a guy with just wrestling. Like getting him to the ground and push it to the ground, like, I did it. Like you can't even move. Some kind of a manhandling, like that's what it is.
No, you're 100% right. And it's kind of interesting because I remember reading an article because an MMA fighter by the name of Pat Barry, he's married to Rose Namajunas.
Yeah, Namajunas. She's a Lithuanian, by the way.
And oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's, fantastic fighter, former champion and all that. And I remember reading Pat Barry talking about training with a wrestler from, from Minnesota by the name of Cole Conrad. And Cole Conrad was a national champion. When I was in high school, I remember watching his title against Steve Mocco from Oklahoma State. And I was like, wow, this guy's amazing. And he did a few MMA fights. And Pat Barry talked about it and wrote an article about it afterwards and basically said, like, that guy, if he would have, he's like, rolling with wrestlers is the scariest thing. He's like, because that guy could have raped me and I could have done nothing about it. And as you mentioned, that holding down, that's definitely different than striking. I love boxing. I'm a huge boxing fan. I love kickboxing. But with wrestling, that idea, and like you said, it's almost innately built in us. I wrote a book, as you mentioned, Wrestling with Discipleship, and the first chapter I wrote is called "The Bible Says Imitate God, Therefore I Wrestle," because I remember looking at the Bible when I first came to Christ, because I was an atheist, and I remember Googling like wrestling in the Bible, because wrestling was my God ultimately before I came to know God. And I was like, where's this wrestling in the Bible? I know it's in there. And immediately, it's in the very first book of the Bible, Genesis. And in Genesis chapter 32, Jacob gets his name, Israel, as we would know the country now today, named after him. Jacob gets his name after wrestling with God himself. It actually says, Jacob actually says in Genesis 32, I saw God's face to face, and yet I still live. And he actually wrestled with God. And I was like, it's so interesting. If God is a wrestler, I think it's something innate within us. My boys, I didn't have to, teach them how to shoot, teach them how to sprawl. As soon as they, could crawl, they were wrestling with each other, and it is something that it seems like is just in our DNA, that God has made us in such a way that, like you said, and you don't want to punch your friends in the face, but anyone wants to wrestle their buddy and see who can hold him down, and there's nothing he can do. I got you. Yeah. It's like that perfect, and sometimes women looking, they're like, that's kind of weird, but I'm like, man, it is so true. That men want to wrestle each other. It comes naturally with our build.
So my son is 5 years old, so he's like a bear cub. So he's just wrestle. He's going to the rear naked choke. He's going to do this and that, and flipping him apart. That's just in our nature, right from our birth.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's why I think everyone that takes to wrestling, they really do take to it like a fish in water, because it just feels like what we're supposed to do as men. Try it out, see who can kind of hold each other down, and who gets to squeeze a little tighter. I mean, we've been doing it for thousands of years for a reason. It's not on accident. It's something that is within each one of us.
So when I watch UFC, I see all the greatest fighters. They're almost more than 50% of them were just wrestlers, right? And what I noticed with the wrestlers is their weight of center of the weight, right, is on their waist. They got the big ass, big legs like Cormier, right? It's almost impossible to take him down. He's not that big, he's not that tall, and he's so he knows his maneuvers, and he knows where his weight is. And Khabib as well, he's not a big guy, but it's almost impossible to get him down. And he's manhandling all his opponents, the way what he did to Conor, right? For 4 rounds, and like inch by inch, by pushing and pushing and pushing. And on the 4th round, he just choked him with a neck crack. He just manhandled him.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's that training that gets done every single day for 5 days a week. And then you compete and throw that on a Saturday, and you cannot trade that amount of training for anything. And even when you do MMA and you work on your striking and stuff, there's only so many times you can spar and really throw at each other. Like you can't just keep getting hit in the head. It's not going to make you better. You're actually going to get worse. It's going to hurt you. Where with wrestling, you're talking about kids. Like my sons wrestle. They're 11 and 9. And they have wrestled, when they were younger, 2 to 4 times a week. And then a lot of, like this year, for example, my 9-year-old's like, I want to be more involved. I want to do more. And so he's been going 5 days a week.
Wow, that's a lot.
5 days a week. He wants to be there every day as I coach and so forth. And I'm like, he just wants to push and push and push and see what his body can do. And there really is no substitute. No substitute at all for experience, and just continuing, like you said, it just seems like their hips are just like when Conor went and sprawled against Khabib thinking, oh, I can grab this, what we call a crotch lock, and this is going to get me out. I was like, do you understand? Like, he has been there not 1, 2 times, not 1,000 times, just a million times.
20 years.
It's just in Dagestan wrestling bears in Dagestan. And this becomes such a culture and a life that there's just no shot. No matter your 90-day training camp, it doesn't matter if you brought in Olympic medalists to teach you how to wrestle. You cannot substitute even the technique and training the technique and being a freak athlete for the amount of work that has been done. You can't do it. It's not going to happen.
And almost no injuries. I mean, no concussions. All that stuff is very rare, right? Maybe if you collide the head with the heads.
Yeah, I've had a few guys that had issues with head injuries, and a lot of times it has to do with their style of wrestling, blocking shots and things, being head first. Just like with any sport, there are certain guys that are more apt to get injured because of their style of play. Even in basketball, there's guys like that they're trying to jump out the building all the time, so they're falling a little bit more. And with wrestling, it's the same way. But in terms of injuries, the thing is with wrestling, you're always going to be hurt. It's just standard. It's par for the course. Like you're always going to have something, my thumb, my this, my arm, my shoulder, my knee, my ankle. Something's going to be wrapped up so that you can still compete. But the good thing is, typically, unless guys are getting slammed on their head, typically the head and the neck injury, and we train our necks so much in wrestling. Oh yeah, we're training our necks all the time, and anyone would tell you that is one of the best benefits for someone to train, if you're training your neck, to not get knocked out even. And so wrestlers a lot of times will have that hard head and that hard neck and so forth, and it's a lot harder to get these guys knocked out because they've been training their neck since they were 5. My son can sit there in a bridge and walk all the way around like a spider without touching the ground with his hands, just on his neck, because he's training it all the time. There's just no substitute for that. People are not, like, a lot of people are like, look at Mike Tyson had a training video that went viral with his neck, and they're like, how is he doing these bridges? I'm like, all of my 5 to 7-year-old wrestlers do that every day, every practice, to get ready before we go in there, because I'm going to be putting my neck in spots, and I have to be prepared if I'm going to do that.
Listen, and that position in wrestling, right? When you get the neck, that's so intimidating. Like, what the fuck are you doing? That's not a comfortable position for a man. So you gotta train.
Oh yeah, you got to know your balance. You got to know your weight. Like you said, their hips, their butt right there is just like, whoa. But the thing is they know how to move it too. It's good to have it. I mean, trust me, I've done grappling with guys who look like He-Man, but if they don't have real strength, and that real strength of being able to manipulate a body in the way that it doesn't want to go when it's trying to go the other way, like, it's not real strength to me. And I love weightlifting. I'm a big advocate for weightlifting myself. But if I don't know how to twist a body around that's trying not to get moved, to me that's not real strength. Those weights aren't coming at you. They're not trying to force their will upon you. And so for me, when it comes to all of that training, like, for me personally, I'd much rather train trying to throw guys who do not want to be thrown.
Sure. So I remember myself, I was like maybe 15 to 16 years old. I went to my first Muay Thai session, and the coach showed me, like, when you go into the clinch, you got to take your hands and control the head with your neck. And I was like, why? And he showed me. So he grabbed my head on my neck, and he was like, just controlling me. And I was like, oh, he can do whatever he wants with me. So you got to be strong, with the strong core, with the strong back, with the strong neck, head, etc. And you have to know how to manipulate your body.
It's funny too, because it was really a revelation for UFC fans when Anderson Silva came over to fight Rich Franklin, and Rich Franklin was dominating the weight class. He had knocked out Nate Quarry and made him look like a stiff. I mean, literally put him down. Yes, like nothing scary. People had ever seen. They're like, whoa, is this guy dead? And then, like, Anderson comes over and he puts that Muay Thai clinch on, and the things he did to Rich Franklin's nose. I mean, I remember Rich, after getting knocked out, it looked like he did not belong in the same ring with him. And after getting knocked out, he looked at himself up on the Jumbotron after, and his nose was an S. And he was like, oh man, look at what this guy did to me. And as you mentioned, that controlling of the neck there, I think people were like, what on earth was that. And then Anderson
He was
did it
swinging
forever.
like this.
Oh, absolutely.
To the
Locked
knee,
in.
to the knee. Yeah, bam, bam, bam.
I loved Muay Thai. I love Muay Thai. So I
That's
was
a
big
vicious
fan.
sport.
It is,
Oh
and
my
the
God.
elbows to go with it once you understand, and the reaction too of throwing a knee, a guy's putting his head up, and then you can come back with an elbow. It is a violent sport to watch. I mean, even more so than MMA. If you were just to watch
Yeah, for sure.
a Muay Thai fight, it is so much more violent what's going on there. And the training facilities over there in Fairtex in Thailand and stuff, those guys, I mean, that stuff's wild. They'll wilt a lion real quick over there. I mean, it's
You
no
don't want to
joke.
mess with them.
No, absolutely not.
And wrestling is super exhausting, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
so there are people that say that, for instance, why Cormier lost his the last two fights because he didn't wrestle. And the reason is he didn't wrestle with Stipe is because he was 40 plus years old and it's too exhausting for him. So Stipe did the same thing in a fight with Ngannou. He had to wrestle him, but it's too exhausting to wrestle with this guy to 50 pounds. So he tried to box with him. We know all the result. He got knocked out.
Yeah, and absolutely. And you mentioned it there. Like these guys tried to, but it is absolutely exhausting. And that's the benefit if you are just a super class striker. I mean that you are hands and feet above. And this was actually the reason why Chuck Liddell did so well for so many years was because his striking was just, top of the line. And it was awkward. It was weird.
Yeah.
The guy had he had the reach of a heavyweight, but fighting at 205. I mean, just an incredible reach. But he was a Division I wrestler at Cal Poly. And instead of using his wrestling, he did have to use it early on against like Vitor Belfort and so forth, because Vitor was a little better than him as a striker, I thought. But he had to utilize it. He utilized his wrestling for the defense.
Yes.
So like nobody can take me down. I have these hips, and when you try to take me down, I'm gonna get you with my uppercut. I'm gonna hit you with my overhand right. And so it's really interesting to see how that kind of developed. And I always tell people this because I've trained MMA fighters for wrestling for MMA. And actually, that's how I got into jiu-jitsu. Somebody saw me training for college wrestling, and they were like, hey, have you ever thought about MMA or jiu-jitsu? And I was like, jiu-jitsu is weird. I don't want to do jiu-jitsu. And he's like, just come. And then I ended up going with him and learning a little bit. And then he was like, hey, how about I trade you? I'll teach you jiu-jitsu, you teach me wrestling. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm not, and I told him, and this is the truth, I still teach on Monday nights at a jiu-jitsu school for wrestling. And I say the same thing, guys, I'm not going to be able to train you for 90 days and get you ready to take down the best of the best or some guy who's wrestled his whole life. That's not going to happen. But if you give me everything you got and you give me 90 days, I can teach you how to make every takedown hard, so that you can at least make them tired, so that later in the fight, when they're going for that, you've already sprawled, you've already stopped it, and now they got their head down, now their shoulders out of whack, that lactic acid is building up, and now you can stop them, and now you can get to your strikes. Or even, something like Nick Diaz was always good at was getting them to fall right in, Nate as well, getting them to fall right into the trap. I remember Nick Diaz versus Takanori Gomi, literally late in the fight after battering him, with his long strikes, Gomi shoots in and he's in a go-go plata. He's getting, put out real quick. And Nate locking up, triangle chokes on black belts when he was still, I think, a purple belt or even maybe a brown belt, locking it up and flexing for the camera because he knows it's locked in. So because defending all of that, it, like you said, that exhaustion, it really is exhausting trying to finish all these takedowns. And that's why I think early on, Randy Couture, Matt Lindland, Dan Henderson, these were wrestlers, but they were also phenomenal Greco-Roman wrestlers because they were upper body. And for Randy Couture, he was a great dirty boxer as well.
In the clinch.
In the clinch, fantastic. And he boxed for Army as well. So he wasn't just a wrestler, for Oklahoma State. He wasn't just, that. He also could box. And those kind of takedowns are much easier on the body. And I realized that if you came into a wrestling room when I'm wrestling with guys, I'm not usually I'm a little older now. I'm not trying to shoot down at a leg and try to have to stand back up with it. I'm going to play inside up top, and I'm going to exhaust him up here so that I can get my takedowns. And it seemed like a lot of those transition, even Fedor Emelianenko with his Sambo background, a lot of his stuff was upper body takedowns. And that really proved to not expend so much energy on the finishes. And then GSP was more of a, he would shoot in his style. He had a blast double that he could shoot even if he knew it was coming all the way from one side to the other because he was a freak athlete.
Yeah.
And then Khabib, on the other hand, he has trips and all that stuff too, but he is so suffocating. And he gives out for that takedown everything to get it. He does not go, oh, I didn't get to the leg, I'm not going to do this. He chases it down, and it makes it almost impossible inside of that ring to stop anything. I mean, with Justin Gaethje, when they fought, I mean, he hunted Gaethje down. And Gaethje was a Division I wrestler from Northern Colorado.
He's not a rookie.
You've never seen it, though. You've never seen his wrestling show up in MMA for some reason. I think sometimes wrestlers, and I know how it is, when I started training boxing, and I'm like, man, I'm getting really the exchange. I can box. It's like, hey, don't forget, you are a wrestler. Go back to your game. But I mean, Gaethje's had a wonderful career, but he was getting hunted. I mean, he really did look like a gazelle. Yeah. And Khabib was even taking those shots. He's like, I'm going to get this takedown. And when I get it, it's going to be over. And he almost finished him in the first, and then ended up finishing him later. But
I like those photo comparisons. So the first round, Dustin versus Khabib, and Justin Gaethje versus Khabib. The first round, they're fresh, right? Second round, at the first second of the second round, they're exhausted, drained with sweats. Dustin and Gaethje, they're like done. For 5 minutes, only wrestling for 5 minutes with this Dagestani guy. That is crazy. Running from him, just defending all that stuff. And the pressure that Khabib puts on you, man, it's like out of the world. Something else.
Something else.
So UFC 299, you watched the fight between Blades and Almeida?
Yeah.
So the Blades was like, someone else can wrestle in the heavyweight division?
I know.
Because he's top of the top in the heavyweight division.
Yep.
And he seemed like he was a rookie in that fight.
Yeah.
Almeida, and he was much lighter than him.
Yeah, he was.
And that guy just wrestled that.
Yeah, no, he did. And Curtis Blades, he is a dominant force typically especially with his takedowns, and he when he fought Derek Lewis, he was dominating. He was almost knocking him out, and then all of a sudden,
boom,
the lights go out. It was like, oh man, this poor guy, poor Blades has been, basically a gatekeeper, for the real contenders, just about every time. But yeah, it was probably really surprising for him. And he was never even a Division I wrestler, if I remember correctly. I think he was a Division II wrestler. And it's crazy because with wrestling, it evolves so quickly. It really does. It evolves very quickly, where typically the champions of now would absolutely dominate the champions of old. And you kind of saw that in when Brock Lesnar fought Cain Velasquez, because Brock Lesnar was a national champion. He lost when he was at Minnesota. He lost to Stephen Neal, who was a world champion, a NFL, Super Bowl champion, just an incredible wrestler. And Brock got it taken to him. But when he had his senior year, he won that national title. He was incredible. Then he, has to fight a Cain Velasquez who wrestled at Arizona State, had that background. So it wasn't like Brock could just switch over and I'll just take him down. No, you're not just taking down Cain. And he looked like he didn't belong out there. And that is how wrestling evolves. It really does. The athletes get better. I've watched as a trend, because I've coached for 15 years. I've coached for quite a while. I've been a head coach. I'm a head coach again, been an assistant coach, all of that. Coach kids, coached, even fighters and so forth. So kind of run the gambit, so to speak, in terms of my coaching. But I noticed, man, probably about 10 years ago, really, really, really started to notice that these kids, the jiu-jitsu aspect of kids training jiu-jitsu as a kid and then getting into wrestling started to really come in, where these guys are doing some really acrobatic, we call it flow wrestling, or, funk is what it used to be called. Ben Askren was very famous for it back in the day when I was in high school. And I look back at then and now, and it's kind of crazy because I watch these guys just what we call funk roll a bunch of wrestlers who've wrestled their whole life because they had this jiu-jitsu background where they were comfortable kind of showing their back a little bit. And then to watch it have to adapt over time. It's really fun for me personally because I have to keep adapting or I'll die as a coach. And too many guys are, oh, I'm not into that style, so I'm not going to teach it. And I'm like, well, if you don't teach it now, your wrestlers are unprepared. They're not going to be prepared with what's going on. And to watch it evolve and change, and now even everyone's got to have something where they know, at the very least, know what this guy's going to be trying to do. When you grab someone's leg, you're expecting them to go down. And now these guys are like, well, let me flip under your leg and try to go to your back. And you're like, well, what just happened, you know? And so it's been really interesting to see that evolution of the wrestler go from, whoa, I got to figure out, there's these certain guys from jiu-jitsu schools who I got to figure out our game, to now it's all evolving together, and it's actually making for a better MMA fighter as well. Because these guys are coming up, and they're not just, well, like for me, I wrestled in high school, I was going to wrestle in college, but before I did, I wanted to fight. Because I'm like, what do you graduate from? You can't go in professional wrestling. There's 6 weight classes in the Olympics, you know? And so you're like, how many guys are going to be like, oh, I'm going to graduate high school and I'm going to go for the Olympics? It's not likely here in the States. So, what's professional then? Well, professional MMA. And that's really what like when I went to wrestling camp, Uriah Faber was one of my counselors. That was the first time I was like, well, what's this whole thing? He's King of the Cage champion. I'm like, okay, cool. And then he wrestled with one of my coaches. So I was like at UC Davis. And I was like, oh, cool. So when wrestling's done, I'll go into fighting. And that's kind of like the natural movement. But now kids are 5 years old. I mean, not too far from right where we're doing this interview, there's a school that, you know, I've watched a number of them. My buddy trains them. He's a boxing coach. And these are young kids doing MMA, doing flying arm bars and stuff. And I'm like, they are training at such a young age, and they're knowing everything.
And there are no boxers or wrestlers or jiu-jitsu guys. They're just mixed martial artists.
Everything.
Right from the beginning.
Yeah, it's true. It's a true mixed martial. In the beginning, when UFC first started, you know, in the 90s and everything, it was, well, let's see who's going to win, the boxer, the wrestler, jiu-jitsu. And the Hoist Gracie came in and was like, they were like, hey, let's put him up there and show that jiu-jitsu is the ultimate one. And in terms of no training and except for your discipline and then jumping in, jiu-jitsu proved to reign supreme because, you know, even Ken Shamrock, who, by the way, was actually training some jiu-jitsu. He was just called grappling or whatever in the lion's den. He got caught with the gi in the MMA fight. That's who, you know, Hoist ended up beating, or Kimo Leopoldo, and he's sitting there holding his ponytail, punching him in the face, you know.
Wild times.
It was Art Jemerson coming in with one glove, and like, like, what are these guys thinking, you know? Or you had like big sumo dudes in there, and it was cool to see jiu-jitsu reign supreme, and then other people were like, I have to train that. I can't just not train these other disciplines. And then you saw it kind of even out. And then you're like, okay, so what works best? Well, a lot of guys with these wrestling backgrounds are what works best. And, you know, it's been a fun evolution to watch for me personally, growing up with it and being like, well, wrestler. I'm like, yes. But like when Matt Hughes fought Hoist Gracie, that was in 2006. I had just graduated. That's when I thought, okay, I'm going to be an MMA fighter, all this stuff. They basically parsed this matchup as Matt Hughes, the wrestler, versus Hoist Gracie, the jiu-jitsu guy. Matt Hughes had competed at Abu Dhabi, the biggest jiu-jitsu tournament in the world already, years prior to fighting Hoist Gracie. Matt Hughes, because of how long you end up training jiu-jitsu, just like for me, I've coached wrestling for 15 years, but training wrestling was only 6 years of my life. I've trained jiu-jitsu far longer than that, than I have wrestling. Matt Hughes had trained jiu-jitsu far longer than he had wrestling even, I believe. And so when he was beating up on Hoist and getting key locks and Americanas or whatever he was on Hoist Gracie, it wasn't wrestler versus jiu-jitsu. It was a wrestler who then started training jiu-jitsu, you know, and Hoist, who was far too old to be in there, and you know that was more of a marketing ploy.
And Matt Hughes is a tough dude.
Oh,
he's white, he's short, he's wide as hell.
Oh yeah.
He's thick. He's strong. You can see that right from his forearms that he's strong like a machine.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of wrestling evolution, so Cejudo versus Dvalishvili, right?
Oh yeah.
He did everything he wanted with the Cejudo.
Yeah, he did.
Olympic medalist.
Yeah, he did.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how it evolves. And you really do fall behind if you don't continue. I mean, even GSP was not a wrestler growing up, but he actually wanted to compete for, not Forrest, but Whitaker, Robert Whitaker wanted to do the same thing in Australia because he's like, man, I really picked this up. I love this. And GSP was training with all the Olympians there in Canada and was like, hey, I want to go to the Olympic trials and try it out because he was such a freak athlete that he could pick it up. There's not a lot of guys that could pick it up without wrestling, as a kid and in high school and in college and take down Josh Koscheck, a national champion.
Yes.
Like, you're just not finding, but there was GSP. He is the anomaly. I've never seen anybody like that. But yeah, Meyrov there picking him up and lifting him up, taking him to corners that he wants.
That's embarrassing.
It was embarrassing, and it does show. And I thought Cejudo, I expected Aljamain Sterling to take it to him, in all honesty. And Cejudo actually fought better than I expected from sitting out for so long. And
3 years, yeah.
He parties a little too much. You could see it. I remember. O'Malley in an interview, and you see his cheeks all big. And I used to be a drunk, so I recognize the puffy cheeks. And I mean, Cejudo was an incredible wrestler. I mean, came out of nowhere to win. Not out of nowhere, but there was Stephen Abbas in his weight, who was an Olympic silver medalist. He had gotten pinned in what's called a cement mixer by Matt Acevedo, who I went to wrestling camp. He was one of the counselors at our wrestling camp. And Cejudo really did come out of nowhere. I mean, he was not ranked very high when he won that gold medal, and he skipped the whole college thing. He said, I'm just going to go right into trying to make the Olympics, and it worked for him.
Yeah.
A lot of guys it doesn't. Aaron Pico tried to do that. He's an MMA fighter at Bellator, really good fighter. He tried to do that. It has not worked out for him. He lost a very close 3-round decision in wrestling because it's the best of 3 to make the Olympic team against Frank Molinaro. And after that, went I'm going to go MMA full time. And I would have liked to seen Pico because he's a California wrestler, so we always root for our California guys to do well. He went to St. John Bosco High School, dominated the entire state of California really quickly, even as a freshman, and then went and said, no, I'm going to just train for the Olympics. And so, placed at the world for 18 and under, I believe it was, and so forth. But it was kind of sad for us as wrestlers. We're like, man, I wish he would stick it out. And then I'm like, okay, well, at least I'm going to support him and watch his Bellator fight. And
he did well.
He did well, but he got knocked out, pretty early on, with an uppercut from a guy with very few fights. And I think it was probably more arrogance that caught him than anything else, because he was also a Golden Gloves boxer. He wasn't just a wrestler, and did all the MMA and was literally, I thought, the greatest prospect ever coming out in terms of what his credentials were. And so it was tough not seeing him, and I'm hoping he pans out now. I think he has a fight coming up again, but hopefully he pans out. But it's it's interesting to see these things evolve and watch guys like Cejudo, who's a gold medalist, get killed in the wrestling game.
And 2 division champion in the UFC just a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's a tough job to do.
Oh, I mean, yeah, Dominic Cruz and all that.
So you've mentioned the fight between Brock and Velasquez. So the first fight that I saw live when I started watching UFC, that was 2010, November. That was Velasquez versus Lesnar. And I was like watching this fight. So there's Brock, this huge guy, 265. I believe he even cuts his weight to get to 265. And there's this chubby guy from kind of a Mexican. Why are they fighting? I thought the Brock is going to kill that guy. 1 round, he's done. Wow. And it's so unfortunate. So from that on, I became a big fan of Cain. But it's so unfortunate to see what happened to Cain in the last 2 years now, right?
Yeah, with his dog. Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can almost feel what he felt that moment when he was told that those horrible things were happening to his daughter. Man, I just wish he would stop himself and just go to calling police, going to court, something like this, because people say he's gonna get like 15 to 20 years in prison. And the guy is a family guy. He's a great guy. He's a wrestler. He's a former UFC champion. Just a straight up guy, unbelievable person. Everyone says that he's a good, like a person. Khabib says, DC says, aka general manager Javier Mendez says he's a good person, but unfortunate event just ruined his life.
It's tough, and as a father of 4, to think of somebody, and you're a father as well, like to think of somebody going after my child, in that sort of capacity.
Multiple times, he said almost 100 times she was molested, 100 times continuously.
I think, it's interesting. I think maybe Dana White was the one who said it. He said, everyone says what they would do if somebody did that.
That's for sure.
And he's like, he just went and tried to do it, And it is a heartbreaking thing. And this stuff, I believe, is so prevalent. It is happening more and more. And I believe that because of the access of pornography and how easy it is for people to access pornography, and how people are so addicted at such a young age. And so they are getting so addicted to this stuff, and it just keeps fomenting within them until they eventually express it outwardly. And that's why they have to have all these fetishes and so forth, because their heart gets darkened the more that they sear their conscience as with a hot iron. And as they do that, they keep needing to push the next level and next level and next level. And eventually they go, and that wickedness within their heart then comes out in the practice of these wicked deeds. And it is a heartbreaking thing, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. And I believe it is directly related to the amount of access and how easy it is. When I was a kid, if you wanted to look at something like that, you had to go and sneak it from under your dad's, pillow, or, whatever, safe, or whatever it is.
One VHS.
Right. A VHS, or
2 hours
a
max.
book or something, right? Now, accidentally, kids could be just thrown at them nonstop. As soon as you grab a smartphone and put that in your child's hand, you have given them access to millions and millions and millions of violent pornography, images, videos, nonstop, and they're targeted. And I don't think it's any accident. They're targeting these children with this stuff, and it is one of the biggest. It is a heartbreaking thing to realize and to see that. And so it's one of the things I try to fight against so hard. And we came out with a series a little while ago that wanted to expose the fact that so many that are watching these things are watching trafficking victims. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people realize just how many, and because people think of, when they think of sex trafficking, they think
Do you think they care?
The people?
Yeah.
Some people do. Some people do when they find this out. Because a lot of people think like with sex trafficking, it's, like Liam Neeson in Taken. Yeah. And there's some big fat guy on a boat trying to buy women. And so that makes it really isolated. Like, oh yeah, that sounds terrible. They went out to some country and got kidnapped, and next thing you know, you're here. But far more money is made off of taking a victim and continuing to make pornography off of them. And so a lot of people have their phones, and on their phones, they, some of them have a Bible app, and then they search out Pornhub. And next thing you know, they're actually helping to fund pornographic materials that are made specifically by women who have been trafficked. And it is like one of the saddest things is to realize that people are literally going on their phones and aiding and helping, and they're providing. The service is only there to provide for somebody who wants the service. And so you have people that are going and committing this act of looking at these women, many of which are being sex trafficked. And guess what? They're being digital peeping Toms on their own, whether they're trafficked or not. When we catch somebody looking in our blinds or something, or through the blinds, like, how disgusting. But yet this is the digital peeping Tom all the time, and now you have, obviously, with OnlyFans and how rampant that has gone as well. our society is just being pulled down. So when we find out about guys that are, touching, little girls and stuff, they've been watching it online for quite a while too, and they've been fantasizing
Because that was the
about
first step, just to watch.
Absolutely.
Well, you see, you're saying that, for instance, you're watching if you're a straight guy, you're watching normal pornography. I mean, heterosexual pornography, right? I can't even imagine if you're a straight guy, how can you even have a thought in your mind to touch a kid? How is this transferring to thinking of this kind of wicked stuff?
Yeah, I think, the Bible describes it as people are inventors of evil, that their hearts are given over and darkened over time. And so what takes place is, as I had mentioned this earlier too, the Bible says that people's conscience, what they do is they sear it with a hot iron. It's something that God has put within us to protect children. It's kind of interesting. I was listening to a study that was done, and they tried to interview just men and saying, hey, what do you believe the ideal man is? Mm-hmm. And that was far different than the other question that was asked of them of what they thought like manliness was, right, or masculinity. And when it came to masculinity, the answers that people gave were, sleep with whoever you want, be the strongest man, get the most money, all that stuff. That was the idea. But for a good man, when they tried to study what a good man was, it was basically the 3 Ps: provide for your family, protect your family, and to procreate. And so that is the cognitive dissonance that we're seeing, because ultimately these 3 goals of just getting as much money as you can, getting as many women as you can, and getting as buff as you can, and being masculine, that is not what a good man is. And all of us, whatever culture, they found this out, whatever culture that people are in, that's what's actually looked at as when, basically you're sitting at a funeral, what are you trying to find good about the person, so to speak?
Yeah.
And I believe all of those, the reason why it doesn't matter what culture you go in, that's actually what people are looking for in men, is because we're made in the image of God. Because we're made in the image of God, these are the things that God provides for us as well. And it is not only the things that God provides for us, but he commands us to do. So when somebody goes off of that, it's not just, we have a difference of opinion. I just think it's really bad to touch children. I just think it's really, really bad to traffic women or to rape someone. I have to have an objective standard that makes that true regardless of culture. It doesn't matter. And it's not just because, it's written in a holy book. Those things that I believe are written in the said holy book are written there because they actually express God's nature to us. So he hates the shedding of innocent blood. God hates certain things. People get really upset about that. I remember Oprah Winfrey talking about how she really didn't like the Bible verse that said God is a jealous God. Well, I have no problem with that. In fact, I am a jealous husband if my wife was sleeping around, right? If I didn't get jealous of that, or someone coming on to my wife, then do I really love my wife? Absolutely, I do not. God is jealous for his children because he knows what's best for us, because he's the one who created us. And so when he is a jealous God, that's because that's his attributes of goodness, that he does not want us to just go out and do whatever we want and feel however we want. These commands, it tells us, are not burdensome. In fact, when Jesus gave commands, they took burdens off. He says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. When I was an atheist, following after the whims of whatever feelings I had at the moment, I did whatever I wanted to, but I thought that it was because I was free. Now that I don't believe there's a God, I can be free now. But ultimately, the Bible was right. I was actually a slave to my corruption. When I got drunk, guess what? I felt like junk the next day. What did I say to someone? What did I do last night? All of those things. I realized quite clearly that these standards that I was going against, not one of them was to cripple me. Every one of them was to make me free. It's like, you have an iPad or a laptop. If I'm like, I'm so free to use this thing, I'm going to pour Coca-Cola inside of it. And it's like, but it's not designed to have Coca-Cola poured inside of it. And so now it doesn't work, but I was free to do so, but it's not going to work properly. And so when people are doing the things that God has designed us to do the opposite, all of those commands are not burdensome. They actually take the burdens off, because guess what? When you don't cheat on your wife, you don't ruin your family, right? When you're not engaging in corrupt actions, you're not defrauding your neighbor. And you are made in the image of God. And all of these things, when we are corrupting said image of God that we have been made in over and over again, we do so at our own detriment. And so when we see in society people going against the very nature they've been born in, it should be of no surprise to us when things get completely out of whack every single time. Because it's like, man, you have been specifically designed to do certain things, and now you are not doing those things. And so that corruption is showcased in the things that each one of us are disgusted at when we see that people are practicing it. That we know this is a shameful act that people are doing to children. It's not a question, it's objective. It's not in my opinion, it's not just because I grew up in some culture, it is because it's objectively morally wrong, because these moral standards are made straight from who God is in his nature, and then they're endowed to us because we've been made in his image.
Yeah, there's not even a discussion whether it's good or bad. But so if you're an atheist, you live with almost no purpose, right? You're just an accident. You're just a dust in the space. You're just an ant. You become who you become just because of an accident, the Big Bang, the evolution theory. You came from the apes and etc. But if you believe in God and you believe that you were made with a purpose, it all lines up very differently.
Very differently. And I've lived both of those, and the truth was I became an atheist at a church because I grew up in a nominally Christian home just by name only. And, we didn't go to church. We didn't read our Bibles. We didn't do any of that stuff. And I became very conservative. I was a Republican. And so for my hope was that, and to date me of what time it was, my hope at that time when I was in college was, well, if we can get John McCain and Sarah Palin in instead of Barack Obama, maybe then we can save the republic. And all of my goal ended up being that. Like, I thought this was going to be the thing that gets everything. I'll be so happy about this. Now, that obviously I was putting my hope in a bad candidate too, but it was a rock and a hard space. There wasn't neither one were going to be good to vote for. But for me, what bothered me was I had grown up in this house. I had formed a God in my own image, and I was worshiping that God. And that God was not okay with homosexuality, but he was okay with the fact that I would fornicate. He was not okay with stealing, but he was totally fine with me getting drunk every day. So basically what I was doing is the same thing that when I read the Old Testament and saw that Israel did this and all the other nations did this, and they formed gods that fit with the things that they believed. They formed them in there. And ultimately, the God that I was truly worshiping was just my mirror. I was worshiping my mirror. I was shaving my God ultimately. And what happened was I wanted to wrestle in college. I wanted to wrestle at Arizona State. That was my goal in life. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to graduate here. I'm going to go to the junior college because I didn't have the grades at the time. I'm going to go to a junior college right in Glendale, and then I'm going to get into ASU. I'm going to wrestle Division I. That was my goal. I was like, that's what I want to do. And so I worked towards that goal. And then one day, right after my senior year, I got drunk. I usually did every night, and I was driving. I only had my license for 90 days, literally lasted for 90 days. I got drunk, and I crashed my car into a tree, a house, a mailbox, and another car.
You were 16 or 18?
I was 18 at the time. And I crashed my car into all this. It's kind of crazy, but I was trying to park it down a hill, and I was in a big Suburban. Otherwise, I'd probably been dead. But I was trying to park it down a hill, and I actually fell out of the car because it had been turned off because there was a tree branch going through the radiator. And I thought, he fell down and it hit another car, and it stopped. Otherwise, it would have just kept rolling. And I was the only one pushing it. And someone kind of drove by at that time, and they recognized me from being a partier, and they kind of knew who I was. So he said, "Hey, I'll help you out." And when I got in the car, the owner of it was a truck that I had bumped into. The owner, his daughter came out and was like, "You just hit my dad's car," and all this stuff. And I was pretty inebriated, and I just tried to start the car to just get the window to roll up. Not that it would actually start, but just to roll the window up so the lady would stop yelling at me. And the car started. And I drove home, and the guy said, "I'll follow and get the license plate." He was just lying. He made sure I got home. Once I got home, he texted my brother and said, "Dude, your brother's drunk and he's crashing and everything." And he went back to tell them, "Sorry, I couldn't get the license plate." And they said, "Don't worry, his wallet fell out." And my wallet had fallen out of my pocket. And at that time, I'm thinking, like, how could this happen? I was almost away. Cops ended up coming into my house, arresting me, and so forth. And I ended up getting a DUI, a hit and run, and I lost my license and all that. And so when that started happening, all my life, everything always went my way. I won the things I wanted in wrestling. I, had all the friends, had all the girls. I wanted everything. And that was the first time where the little baby didn't get what he wanted. And ultimately, I got caught in everything that I was doing. And I remember even my own brother, like my friends were like, "Dude, you ruined your life. You're never going to be anything," all of that. And I thought that too. I'm like, man, I really did. And so I started hardening my heart towards God being real. And the way the Bible describes it, it says that you suppress the truth in your unrighteousness. And it's kind of like with a jack in the box. You hold it down, and then you can keep turning it. You're like, "Oh, this thing doesn't work. It's not coming out. It doesn't work." And that's what I was doing. I wanted to do the things I wanted to do and have no affiliation with any God whatsoever. And I basically came to a conclusion, like, I'm so sick and tired of this. And I hadn't really expressed it until a friend of mine, I had a party at my house. A friend of mine took me over to a church the next day. He's like, "Hey, we can go get lunch after, come check it out." And I had a late night party and, girls and everything in my room. And when I got to the church, the same girls that were in my room there was 3 or 4 of them pretty close in my vicinity at this church, and their hands were raised. And I said, "This whole thing's fake." And I'm like, God's not real, and I hate him. And I don't want anything to do with it. And that's when I really hardened my heart. And a couple of friends started noticing this. I mean, I was pretty horrible to try to be around. I started taking steroids because I was like, I'm going to wrestle in college. I'm going to fight MMA. Like, I'm going to do all these things. So I started getting big, and I started getting strong, and I started competing in jiu-jitsu and wrestling tournaments and doing all that stuff. And one of my old buddies, a couple of wrestling captains, I worked at a steakhouse at that time. I was a waiter. And I would go, and they would come and visit. I haven't seen him in a while. It was about 6 months. I'm like, "Dude, I have parties at my house every night. Where are you guys? Like, what's going on?" He's like, "Yeah, we're not really doing that anymore." Didn't really say much. And finally, they were coming to that restaurant because it shared a parking lot with a church. And so they would go to their college group, and they were like, "Hey, I'm going to go to this college group after, but let's go eat." And I didn't know they were praying for me the whole time. They would go into church and they'd be like, "Let's pray for Chad," and they're just my old wrestling buddies. And then finally I'm like, "Dude, what's up with this?" He doesn't call, "What's up?" And he texts, he says, "Hey, I'm in film school. Do you want to go check out this movie that comes out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why not? I haven't seen him in a while, let's go." And he took me to the movie. It was called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. It's by Ben Stein. And, I didn't think much of it, but when I went, I'm an atheist at this time. I go to see this movie, and in this movie, I'm watching all of these professors losing tenure, getting kicked out of their position simply because they said, "Hey, it looks like we're intelligently designed." It was that's all it was. It wasn't a Christian film or anything like that. And then Ben Stein is the guy, hosting the entire documentary. And Ben Stein is talking to Richard Dawkins. He's talking to Dr. Michael Ruse, some of these guys that I know from my atheistic background, and he's asking him the simplest of questions in my mind, but simpler questions that at the time I wouldn't have answered, but I said, I don't know the answer, but I would appeal to my authority. Mm-hmm. There are a ton of atheists who know how to answer these questions. Where did the energy come from? If everything started and is wound out, where did it come from? Very, very simple questions. And I watched them squeal. And I watched Richard Dawkins, his best explanation at that time was something called panspermia, which is basically the idea that aliens dropped off some evolution on the earth and eventually it became us. And now we have feelings and care about things and have conversations. And I thought, this is terrible. Or Michael Ruse talking about, well, it was something on the backs of crystals. And I'm just like, what is going on? And I left there that day saying, I've lost a lot of the faith I have in this atheism that I'm trusting in, because the very people that I was expecting to have all the answers don't have the answers. That's a problem. And so I left there and I still don't see him for another 3 months. I'm like, dude, what's up with this? You call me, we go see this movie, like we're supposed to be friends. What is happening? And he calls me again. He says, hey, I'm going to start going to the gym. And I really would love if we can get into shape together and stuff. I'm like, that sounds great. Let's go. And so in January of 2009, we go to the gym. But before we do, he starts talking to me. I'm like, hey, like, what's up, man? Why are you not hanging out? I have girls at my house every night. You can have them. Like, what is going on? Why are you not here with me? And he says, hey, I have to tell you the truth. He said, his name's Adam. And he said, Eric and I have been going to church together. And he said, it's very different than, the ideas that you have. He said, if I'm going to this church and living in sin and doing the things that we're doing, like, the people care about me and they don't want me to be practicing that and saying that I'm a Christian. He's like, so they would actually confront me and say, you shouldn't be doing this, Adam, so forth. And at the time, I thought, you're a bunch of weirdos, one. And number two, I thought, at least they're trying to be real. Like, I don't believe in God, but at least you're trying to be real. And I kind of gave him a scenario before we went to the gym. And I just said, hey, man, you think, you got to do all these things and follow this Jesus guy and all of this. He said, well, what if I'm a pretty good guy and I'm not too bad. And I asked him a bunch of different scenarios, moral dilemmas, and he tried to give me his best answers. I said, I'm a pretty good guy. If I stand before God, he's going to accept me. I'm going to get to go to heaven. And he said, you think you're a good person, Chad? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I am a good person. And he said, hey, can I give you a test to see if that's true? I said, sure, why not, man? And he said, okay. He said, Chad, how many lies have you told in your whole life? I said, well, I'm like, I don't know. Probably a few today, right? I can't even count them. And he said, well, what do you call someone who tells so many lies they don't know how many? I said, well, you call them a liar. I said, okay, that's fine. And he said, so you are? I said, I guess I'm a liar. He said, okay, have you ever taken anything that didn't belong to you regardless of how much it's worth? I was like, well, first of all, I lived in the LimeWire days, so I downloaded about as much music as you could think of. And I was like, plus, I'd stolen liquor from stores and things like that. And he said, well, what do you call someone who steals things that, don't belong to them? And I said, a stealer. He's like, no, you call them a thief. And he's like, so you are? I said, a thief. He said, no, you're a lying thief. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, well, have you ever, stubbed your toe and, cried out, oh, my G-O-D, And I'm like, well, of course. And he's like, when you stub your toe, you don't kick it and go, oh, Adolf Hitler. You don't go, oh, Mussolini. He's like, when you want to show contempt and disgust, you use God's name and you take it in vain. And it's a very serious crime. It's called blasphemy. And he said, I've only asked you 3 of the questions, but by your own admission, you're a lying, thieving blasphemer. And he said, so if you stood before God on the day of judgment, would you be innocent or guilty? I said, well, I guess if I was judged by those standards, I'd be guilty. He's like, so would you go to heaven or hell, Chad? I said, well, I guess I would go to hell. And he said, do you know what God did for you so that guilty sinners would not get what they deserve? And I said, no. And he said, 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ died a horrible death on a cross. He took upon himself all of the shame, all of the sin, everything upon himself. And he said he actually cried out to telestai when he was on the cross. He cried out, paid in full, because your crimes that you committed were paid for on the cross of Calvary. You see, because the cross is a sign of not only love, but judgment. And Jesus is right dead in the center. You have God's perfect justice. And it says, if you confess your sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. He says, God is so much justice that he has to judge sin. He can't be an unjust judge. The sin must be judged. So you can pay for all the sins you committed. This isn't God being a meanie. It's just crimes have been made. You need to pay. Or the blood of Jesus Christ pays for your sins. And when God sees you on the day of judgment, he doesn't see Chad and here's all the good versus all of the bad. He sees his son Jesus has bought and paid for all the sins that Chad has committed. So you can choose to pay for your own sins for all eternity, for the crimes you committed, or you can look upon Jesus and say, I want to put on, as the Bible says, the Lord Jesus Christ, and he has now paid for my sins on the cross. And guess what? When God sees you on the day of judgment, he doesn't see Chad, he sees Jesus. And Jesus didn't do this thing in some back alley. He didn't talk to a salamander in a bucket. He didn't go into some cave and get squeezed by an angel he thought was a demon. No, Jesus did this in public on a walkway into Jerusalem, and they held over their heads the crimes that they had committed. And the crimes next to him were thieves and robbers and murderers. But he himself, all he had above him was King of the Jews because he committed no crime. And then when he rose again on the third day, he didn't just rise again in some secret corner, but he did this before over 500 different witnesses and spent 40 days and 40 nights. And the men who actually went and were running away when Jesus was caught and taken, these same men who ran away scared when a little girl said, don't you know that Jesus? They then became bold as lions and died knowing, plenty of people die for religion, but these guys died knowing whether or not what Jesus said, what Jesus did, and whether or not, most importantly, the resurrection was true. They died and sealed their fate, sealed their testimony ultimately with their own blood. And he shared this with me. And he said, are you ready to give your life to Christ? Like, are you ready to follow him? And I said, no, but let's go work out. I still was not ready, but I will say this. It was the first time I understood the gospel. I had never understood, people say gospel, and I know it means good news and all that stuff, but I didn't understand it. I never understood why Jesus had to die. It just sounded like a really good thing, but people forgive people all the time. I didn't realize the justice that was done in the cross. And so I got that and so forth. And then we started talking at the gym, and he was actually talking about the Beatles, which is funny enough. And I was really, at that time, into a lot of more death metal bands. I kind of looked funny because I would wear Abercrombie and Fitch, but, I'd listen to Devil Driver and Slipknot and, Killswitch Engage and, Atreyu or whatever before I'd go and wrestle and before I'd fight and stuff. But I was really into those bands. They were really my gods. I went to Ozfest, worked my way up to the front for Slipknot, and, I would sing songs and I'd have to look up, what is 3D blasphemy? Because, Slipknot has lyrics that talk about that in Wait and Bleed. And, if you're 5'5", I'm 6'6", this is what it's like to be a heretic, in their song Heretic Anthem, or in their song People Equals Blank, they say contagion, in their song Left Behind, contagion, and I'm sitting at the side of Satan. And I'm like, what's a contagion? And I have to look these lyrics up. And that's what I had memorized. So when this guy's telling me the Beatles followed this Satanist pedophile named Aleister Crowley. And in fact, they even put a picture of Aleister Crowley on the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They put it up in the top left corner. And he's telling me this. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I know what satanic stuff is. These guys, they sing about all you need is love, and, I'm like, what are you talking about? I was not a Beatles fan, but I was like, this is dumb. And he said, hey, I have a video for you. You got to check it out. It's called They Sold Their Souls for Rock and Roll. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll check it out. And so I brought it home, passed out drunk, didn't watch it. I was like, oh, whatever. Then the next day I was talking to a friend and I said, hey, I got this weird video. It's religious and stuff. You're more into that. Do you want to watch it with me? He said, sure. So I went to his house and we turned on the video. And
that was 2009.
This is 2009. This
Wow.
is on January 18th is when I went
Almost
to his
no
house.
content on YouTube.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, really. I mean, just a few things. And I go to his house and I say, let's check it out. And he turns on this, we turn on the video and I start kind of squirming into my chair because I start to realize that evil's real. Like, we're not just moist robots bumping into each other. Like, there really is evil. And I'm looking at this scenario where whether it's the Beatles or the Doors who put a bust of Aleister Crowley in their album, whether it's the Rolling Stones, singing Sympathy for the Devil, whether it is the band like Devil Driver that I used to listen to singing Do What Thou Wilt, which was the maxim of Satanist Aleister Crowley. All of these guys pushing this guy who said that he simply went over to Satan's side, and he said, until this hour, I cannot tell why. In his autobiography, Confessions, this guy who wanted to be Satan's chief of staff, this Satanist, I watched a guy like Jay-Z wear his symbol across his chest that says, do what thou wilt. I'm looking at all of these different characters. They're all pushing the same thing. It didn't matter what era they grew up in. It didn't matter what country they were in. They all push the same stuff. And this guy ends up being a pedophile and affecting many of our laws because of Dr. Alfred Kinsey, who they've just built a statue for at Indiana University, and realizing that even Hugh Hefner said that he was furthering along the work of Alfred Kinsey, who literally was a follower of Aleister Crowley, went to his house in Loch Ness. Mussolini had kicked him out, saying he was the wickedest man in the world. You got to get out of Italy. I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm like, all of the music that I've been into all pushes the same ideology, all of it. Like, it's all the same thing. And so I was more afraid of this at that time when I'm watching this. I'm so afraid. I'm like, Satan's real. I can't get around it. There is a devil and I can't. There's nothing I can do. No amount of my brain capacity could get me away from understanding this. And I've tried everything to try to push aside the fact there's real evil. And then it dawned on me. I was like, the only thing I'm more frightened of is the fact that there's a God. And it's actually interesting because the Bible says that you're saved by grace through faith. It's a gift of God, lest any man should boast. It's a gift. That's how you're saved, but it's through faith. And it says that faith comes by hearing the words of Christ. And I didn't know that. I hadn't read the Bible yet. But when I heard Jesus' words in Matthew 12, verse 30, he made it so crystal clear that I literally remember hearing these words, and I had a tongue ring in. I took my tongue ring out because I knew I was just using it to attract women and so forth, to do things that I knew God didn't want me doing. And I got on my knees when he said in Matthew 12:30, he who is not with me is against me. And I said, I haven't just been not with Jesus. I've actually been against him. Everything I've done, all the corruption, the people I've corrupted with my ideology that ultimately I got from something else, I realized I was corrupting people. And immediately I gave my life to Christ. I felt literally the Holy Spirit come inside of me. All of a sudden I was convicted on things I hadn't read a Bible. I didn't know that these things were wrong necessarily, but I did immediately at that moment. And I remember I drove to the beach, Malibu, and I even drove to a certain tower, funny enough. And I drove there, and I'm praying for the first time in my life. I'm like, Lord, you're there. I know you're there, and you've saved me. What does this mean? Like, what am I supposed to do? And I'm praying, and it was really late. It's now January 19th when I give my life to Christ, 2009. And I'm driving back into Simi Valley, and we have a giant cross on Easy Street. Yeah, you've been in Moore Park. It kind of goes that road. And there's a giant cross there, but the sun's coming up on the east. And I drive home. I take a little nap. I buy a Bible for the first time. I open up Matthew, and after I got past the genealogies, all of a sudden I'm learning about this Jesus that I just come into a relationship with. I'm like, this is amazing. I called my friend. I said, dude, who's the guy who made this video? I don't care if he lives in Georgia or something. I'm a waiter. I get a couple days off a week every week. I got money. I can go fly. And he said, oh, don't worry. That's my pastor. We'll meet him on Sunday. I said, okay. So I call him, we go. And that Sunday, I went to church for the first time. I met him. He began discipling me. We started going out sharing the gospel with people. And all I was doing was just, hey, I was a beggar who found bread. I'm trying to lead people to the bread. Like, I can't believe I found this truth I've been neglecting and pushing aside for so long. And then getting to know him. And funny enough, eventually getting to fellowship with people my age as well. Becoming friends with people. And long story short, I ended up meeting his daughter. And about a year and a half after I came to Christ, I asked him if I could court her. And then about 10 months from there in Africa, I asked him for her hand in marriage. And then we got married. And 9 months and 5 days from our wedding, we had our first of 4 children. And it's kind of crazy because on our first date, when I asked her to court, and to go out and to be my girlfriend, I told her I don't think I can have children. I've never gotten a woman pregnant. My wife was a virgin till the day we got married. And I told her I don't want to start this relationship because I want it to be a marriage unless you understand that I don't think I can have children with the way I abuse my body, steroids, alcohol, that stuff. I don't think I can have children. And I was wrong. God's grace is much greater than I expected. And then ever since then, we've had 4 kids. We don't have any problem having children.
You're not even 40 years old.
Yes.
4 kids, so a few more.
Yeah. Amen.
So, Chad, I feel 100% what you were saying. So almost 2 years ago, I started asking myself, like, I started listening to the lyrics of the songs. It doesn't make sense, right? I started to watch the TV shows in a different way, mentioning. Okay, I started seeing all those performances on the stage, and I see they're just worshiping it. How is it possible? How can this be straight to the face now on the internet, shown to the whole world, to the public, right? And I started asking myself, so if there's only a possibility, if this is bad, if this is evil, right, which appears to be this, so there's definitely has to be some good, something that is better, that is just the opposite side. So that's how I started my journey into the God, into the Creator of mine, into Jesus Christ, and all that stuff. I have a lot of people in my circle that says, well, you're saying they're worshiping the devil, right? On the stage, they're dressed like the devil, but that's just because they want attention. That's because just like you guys that do a podcast, you talk about them, you get their attention, you get to listen to their songs, they get paid for this, you watch their music videos, etc. So what would be your answer to this kind of questions? Like, what if this is just to get attention? It's just all fake. There is no Satan, no devil, no evil.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, but I also think it's so simplistic because first we could just say, well, why is Taylor Swift all of a sudden wearing devil masks? Does she need attention? I don't think anyone would argue that Taylor Swift does not need to start doing witchcraft and throwing on devil masks in order to garner attention. She doesn't need that. And there are plenty, and I have no problem saying that there are plenty that simply do just want attention. And they're like, hey, if I can be as blasphemous as possible, this is going to bring attention. Couple of things. One, I don't think Satan actually cares. I don't think he cares if it's just for attention or if they actually want to worship him. Because ultimately, I believe he hates us because we're made in the image of God. I think he absolutely hates us. And the Bible says in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2, that he works through the sons of disobedience. And so he will look towards those who are disobedient, do not follow the Lord, do not want anything to do with him, and he will work through them. And so he does not care if you worship him as Baal or Moloch or anything else, as long as you are not giving God his real due. And so ultimately, if somebody is just faking it for attention, then so be it. It says that the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. And so if somebody's just doing it for money, Satan doesn't care because he has them as a puppet on his string anyways. He owns them. The Bible says there are only two things. It says in 1 John chapter 3, that the children of God and the children of the devil are obvious. He who practices righteousness is righteous, just as he is righteous. But he who practices sin, he is of the devil. Why? Because the devil has sinned from the beginning. But he says that Jesus Christ came for this purpose, to destroy the works of the devil. I believe that God is calling people to himself. Jesus says that the Son of Man, that's him, would be lifted up and draw all men unto himself. It says that the Holy Spirit would go out and convict the entire world of sin and righteousness and judgment. And so ultimately, God is calling people through his creation. He says he's made it evident within us that there is a creator. We look at the stars, we look at the skies. This is why I think even with a lot of atheism, they're leaning more towards creature worship and so forth than really just being out and out atheist. Even guys like Sam Harris, who wrote like A Letter to a Christian Nation and so forth, has done a lot of debates against Dr. William Lane Craig and other people. Even these guys are getting into yoga and meditation and trying to figure out ways to, ultimately, they think they're talking to the universe. And all of those things are to get people away from and deflect away from searching out and going to the God that is calling them to himself and distracting them to go to something else. So they do not care. I don't believe Satan cares whatsoever if you do this because you want to sing these love songs and give God nothing to do with his due. And I'm not saying there's something wrong inherently with love songs. Whatever is good, whatever is lovely, whatever is pure, let's meditate on these things. But a lot of them are totally away from what the Bible describes as love, being patient, and love is kind, and it keeps no record of wrongdoing, and it rejoices in the truth. But a lot of the songs today, it doesn't have to be, rah, rah, let's worship Satan. It could simply be, let's sleep with whoever we want, let's just get drunk, this is all life is about. Or it can simply be a depressing song over and over again. And it tells us in Isaiah 14, Ezekiel 28, that Satan came down with his stringed instruments, that he was thrown down. He wanted to be lifted up higher than God himself. And he wanted to be exalted this way. And so God throws him down. But the great thing that I know is that one day it says that the nations will see him thrown down. And they will look, not the first fall, but the second one where he's going to be thrown into a pit forever. It says that they will look at him and be like, this is the one who ruined the nations and brought them to their knees. This is the one, because of how small he is compared to God. And so when you look at these guys that are deciding to try to get attention by acting like they're on Satan's side, he doesn't care. You can do that, or you can worship yourself, and he'll be completely fine with that. In fact, that's a lot of the literature that you'll read. A lot of the Satanists today will say, oh, we're just atheists, we're just rebellious, right? Lucian Graves and some of these guys. The problem is their founders, guys like Aleister Crowley, guys like Anton LaVey, they admitted, and they have shown, specifically Anton LaVey admitted this, that he does...
He created the Satanic Church, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And he wrote the Satanic Bible. And he, even admitted that he knows that there's only so many things he can say publicly and in print so that he can kind of move the outrage just enough and also still have adherents. Because he knows if you're just like, yeah, we're worshiping Satan, we're on the losing side of this thing, nobody's going to be following him. It's not going to happen. And so he let his hair down on that at a convention with theistic Satanists there, where they really do believe that there is a Satan, and for some reason they think he can win and he cannot. But you look at this, and he let them know, like, he's duped them. He has duped people into believing, oh, you can just follow atheism and so forth and just follow your heart ultimately. And now you have these entire satanic temples now. They try to say that abortion is a religious practice. And so now they have their own doctors because they're sacrificing children to Satan. And that's what it is. And a lot of people, whether someone does that action and ends the life of a child thinking they're doing it to the God of convenience or the God of money, because that's what it is. Like, this child is going to...
You mean if you're a doctor?
What's that?
You mean if you're a doctor and you do abortions?
Or if you do abortions, you are basically what in the Old Testament, the Bible will describe these as the high priests. that they would give to they would give the children to these satanic high priest of Moloch and of Baal and these false gods, and that they would sacrifice the child so that they could have some sort of benefit financially, the parents and so forth. And this is something that is really common now. And back then, it's kind of crazy because they actually had drums. It was called in the Valley of Ben Hinnom, which is the same place that Judas ended up hanging himself, and it would be called the Valley of Blood. But the Valley of Ben Hinnom, which is actually a picture of hell itself, when they would have these false gods that they would fry the children on these molting hands that were really hot, and they would have to play drums to drown out the sound of what was going on. And sadly enough, so much today when it comes to the music is still drowning it out. Olivia Rodrigo is out there handing out Plan Bs just at her most recent concert.
That's crazy.
Handing out Plan Bs to kill babies, and they're drowning out the sounds of the baby's cries, which a bunch of drums to a song to Vampire, whatever song she wants to sing. And so the same ancient priest, the same Satan who just came in many different forms, and what the Bible actually says in Psalm 96:5 is that the false gods of the nations, they're ultimately demons. And Paul makes this exact case in the New Testament. That he basically says you can't sit at the table of the Lord and the table of the devils at the same time. And he uses synonyms. Idols, these things that people are worshiping, ultimately what's behind them are demons. They're not just abstract pieces of wood. That's maybe what it looks like to us. That may be the accident, but it's not the substance of what they are. The substance of what they are is demonic. And so when you have people doing all this stuff, and now it's with bubblegum, princesses, you have, My Teardrops on My Guitar with Taylor Swift, but now Karma is a God, right? You have, Lady Gaga singing that Judas is a demon that she clings to, and literally doing actions in her music videos that look exactly like Kenneth Anger's Lucifer Rising, where she swallows rosary beads and so forth. All of these things, they are not on accident, and whether they're doing it for attention or not, they have Satan's attention, and there's no way that I just think about advertising. The Super Bowl, right, just happened. And you pay millions and millions. Pepsi pays millions and millions of dollars, 30-second ads for $10 million or whatever they're paying. If those 30-second ads didn't change your mentality on what you were going to do and whether or not you were going to go buy their product, they would be bankrupt. But they know if you get this in front of them, people are going to buy it. And in the same exact way, with whatever movie or music or whatever, kids have longer hair to put AirPods in to cover up the fact that they're listening to music the entire time the teacher's talking. Literally. And we have people listening to all this stuff, pushing this propaganda on our children, on our friends, on our neighbors, and we think, oh yeah, it doesn't have any effect. Yeah, right. Satan isn't looking back, seeing all the stuff that's going on and goes, man, I really wish I would have thought of that. What a great idea to corrupt children to go see pop stars singing and then be handed Plan B so they can sleep with whoever they want and then just pop in this pill and kill the baby.
I was watching a podcast, I want to say a month ago. So that was a whatever podcast, and that was Charlie Kirk. Yeah. So he said, so he had a debate with a girl on the topic of abortion, and he was saying, if you saw what is abortion like, you would never do that. Something like this. And he kind of explained what is an abortion. So with this tool inside the uterus, with the cranking the neck of a baby, and only for me, I'm 36 years old. That was the first time I thought of it. Like, how does abortion look like? So this is how it looks like. Yeah, cranking the neck, breaking it down physically. That's deep. That's tough, and I believe that's the hottest topic there is right now. Right, the abortion. Oh yeah. 2022 election. I believe that's what did not cause the red wave that was expected because of the Roe versus Wade case in case of abortion. You see, Chad, so 30 years ago, we would never see this kind of music and performances, right? We saw, okay, maybe, for me, I don't know whether Michael Jackson was wicked or not, right? But his music, it seems like it was not bad. Whitney Houston's music was not bad. All those artists, they were singing true songs, maybe not about the true love, but about love. They were not worshiping the devil. That was 70s to 80s. Of course, at the same time, there was like AC/DC, Metallica, all that stuff. You saw the t-shirts the Metallica guy wore? Not PlayStation, but
Pray to Satan.
Play Satan.
Yeah.
Straight to your face. No, that's just mimicking. So, but now in 2020, they're doing this big time. All the pop stars they're singing, not only the rock and metal music does that, but pop stars. They sing about this, they're worshiping. Drake, if you see the lyrics, I was surprised. He's referring to, I want to say, God 5, something like this, which is what? The Satan, right?
Yep.
Every other artist is just worshiping it. Why? Is it some kind of, we're going to some kind of a conclusion, some kind of a armageddon, something like this? Why now?
No, I actually love that question, because one of the interesting things when you look up even world religions, most world religions, they're cyclical, right? The winter solstice, the summer solstice, and so forth. So they are literally cyclical in their nature. It's the way that they work. Oh, it's this time of the season. It's, people are looking at the stars and they're saying, oh, I'm a Capricorn or whatever it is, right? And so most of the world religions deal with that because it's the way that people will see the world because they're within it. So they make their gods within their world. But the God of the Bible transcends, and he transcends because he stands outside of time, but then shows us that this is all culminating to something. So he's a God of culmination. And so when I see all this going on and it ramping up more and more, and now that it's just so normal that, kids in high school could wear the same shirt, Pray to Satan, that you go by Urban Outfitters and they have entire shirts which are, somebody sacrificing their friend, as a joke, right? When I see this as just normal, it makes a lot of sense, because if the faith is truly culminating, then what it says is true. What Jesus, all the prophecies about Jesus, that he would be pierced for our transgressions, they would bruise for our iniquities, that they will reject him, they will think you're smitten, stricken of God. And he would do that. That's 700 years prior to Jesus stepping foot on the earth. And they write about it and say, oh, that's what it's going to look like, that he would be born in Bethlehem, written over 300 years before Jesus ever steps the earth. He doesn't get to choose where he gets born. He doesn't get to choose how he dies if somebody else is the culprit of it, right? All of those things, exactly how it would look. So if what he said it would look like at his first coming, then his second coming is also true. And so when he says in his second coming things like this, in not only 2 Timothy talks about this, Paul's letter about what the end times would look like. He says men will be lovers of self. They will be lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. It tells us also in the end times that it will look a lot like what is called Sodom and Egypt. Now, this is really interesting because the point there in the book of Revelation, which is the culminating final book of the apocalypse, at the end of what it will look like, it says that it will look like Sodom and Egypt. Sodom in the sense of the sexual promiscuity of Sodom, and how wicked and disgusting Sodom was when it came to their sexual habits. So that's already one. I don't think it's very hard to convince anyone that, yeah, it's kind of going that way. Whether it's the transgender stuff or whether, people not knowing what they are and so forth, or, the stuff we were talking about earlier with the trafficking and the access to pornography and OnlyFans and all of that stuff. I don't think it's harder than anyone to say, oh yeah, that does kind of look like what he said. Then the other one is Egypt, which is very, very interesting, because Egypt as a whole, when you look at the time, remember, God took his people out of the land of Egypt. Mm-hmm. He took his people out of slavery. And Egypt at that time had one centralized leader. There were also, it says in the end, there'll be like Jannes and Jambres, which were these magicians at that time. And it says it will look like this. So you'll have the sexual promiscuity, but you will also have one leader that steps in and becomes like a pharaoh. and enslaves everyone else. And the Bible says that's exactly what is going to take place, that eventually, and what's interesting, and this is kind of crazy when you look into it, the Egyptian imagery of so many. I've mentioned Aleister Crowley a number of times on here. He said, it is with the eye of Horus, it is with this eye I peck out of the eyes of Jesus as he hangs upon the cross, and he crucified a frog acting like he was killing Jesus. And he believed that Horus was this god, and also Awas is what he called this god, but it was the eye of Horus. This was a symbol. This is a symbol used by a number of people. Not only when you open up your wallet, if you have some money in there, you're going to see it on the back, the eye of Horus. You're going to see a pop star like Katy Perry do an entire song, Dark Horse, where Egyptian gods involved. Horus, she's on the top of the triangle, by the way. You're going to see somebody like Rihanna with an entire Egyptian goddess tattooed across her chest and on her feet. You're going to see over and over again, the eye in the triangle. You got it, non-stop. You're going to have Jehovah. Oh, who is that? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what Jay-Z has his adherents at his concerts, as you mentioned. They look like worship services. And they're literally, I can show you clip after clip of them crying out, Jehovah, Jehovah, because Jay-Z and Hova is what he goes by. And then guess what? A bunch of his clothing lines are eye in the triangle, all this stuff. And so everyone is ultimately being pushed down this road of acceptance. And when that supreme leader comes, he is going to get the whole world to follow him. That's what it says. The whole world it says the merchants and their drugs, actually, their drug pushing, that they also deceive the entire world with their drugs. And so many people are so addicted to drugs today. And it's not just the guys on the street. I drove here. How many tents I drove by on the way down DeSoto, right? You can't get around it. But also when you look at it, you see, like when I go to Westlake, right, in this nice area, Calabasas, go by the CVS and see the line out the door where the nannies are picking up all of the antidepressants and so forth, which one of the side effects is that they cause depression, right? Opioids, exactly. And when you talk to, and like I've been a coach for 15 years, I've talked with a lot of different people, and when you go out to eat and you see some of them, and they're so addicted to their phone, they're so addicted to their drugs and so forth. It's not an accident.
Pornography addiction.
Culminating. What's that?
Pornography addiction.
Oh, pornography addiction. I mean, just through the roof. And it's so interesting when I think about one of the things it says that they will lack in the end times, they will lack family love, and they'll love their pleasure more than God. How many families have been ruined by the father having pornography addiction? Absolutely ravaged, marriages ruined. There's so many effects on the mind. And actually, they did a study, Fight the New Drug talks about this. They did a study where they examined the brain when a man looks at pornography, or a woman looks at pornography. And the brain, when it sees somebody committing pornographic acts, the part of the brain that goes off is not the part that deals with humans, it's the part that deals with objects. So people are literally looking and walking around seeing people not as humans,
as an object,
but as an object, which I think with the whole thing in 2020, with the masks and everything that people were under, people stopped having genuine, real conversations. People stopped actually caring about their neighbor. I mean, I remember telling someone that I think people are ready for their supreme leader. And I wouldn't have said that, 5-6 years ago. I would have been like, oh no, I think a lot of stuff has to happen. But I remember we went out, and my son at the time, I think he was 7 at the time, maybe 6 or 7. And a few of his friends were like, hey, can we all get together and throw the football around at the park? And so my son, with a bunch of other 6 and 7-year-olds, were at the park throwing the football around. Somebody in the neighborhood called the cops on 7-year-olds playing catch in the park. And I said, okay, you guys are ready to accept whatever the government tells you to do. And if you can get this supreme leader that looks like, it says that he looks, right, like a lamb, but he speaks like a dragon. That's the false prophet who pushes and tells everyone to go worship the Antichrist. And it says that eventually he'll get to a place where people will now say, I will worship this beast, I will worship him, and I will take this mark on my right hand or my forehead so that I can buy or sell. And I thought, man, all that sounds crazy for that to happen and take place someday. Not when you watch you could go to an Amazon thing. You could scan your hand now,
Yeah.
just to get food. You could scan your hand. And I'm like, if you would think about when that was written 2,000 years ago, while John was on the island of Patmos, out there for his faith, and he's writing about how there's going to be a day where there's going to be a marking on your hand or your forehead that you can't buy or sell without it. And now we're looking at that stuff happening. And who would have told you that there'd be a 6 million man army at some point, when at that time the population was much, 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 much smaller. And yet now we're at that place. China has that and boasts about it, right? You look at all these things, and people are just waiting for that leader to come, and people are going to accept it. And the movies and the music all point us to that as well. In fact, even so many of the Marvel movies push the idea of an Antichrist figure that you can just follow and everyone follow. In fact, we have an entire film called the Marvel and DC's Antichrist Agenda, where you look at so many of the characters, they actually have you fighting against God characters, and it's the Avengers who end up, let's put all the nations together. When the nations come together and there's one supreme leader, then we'll be able to battle against this foreign threat. Even Ronald Reagan said that in front of the UN. If we just had this alien threat, I think we could all come together and all be one. And that is ultimately what's getting pushed upon everybody.
But that's good, or that's bad?
It sounds good on the surface, but you realize, when you start to realize that in the culmination, the nations come together to fight, not against the Antichrist. They're with the Antichrist. In the end, the nations actually come together, and they're worshiping the beast, and they make war and try to fight Jesus when Jesus comes back.
So you want to say that Thanos was a Jesus?
That's the kind of the picture they give out. Remember, he gives up his only child, right? It's kind of interesting because Thanos himself gives up his only child. He wipes out the
50%
planet,
of
50% of the
population.
planet. But that is actually going to happen at some point. Now, Thanos isn't no picture is a perfect picture, but it's kind of interesting because you have all these nations coming against. And when you look at the Bible, it says 10 nations, 10 rulers, they come together and then they fight against God who comes back. And it's kind of interesting. Even Thanos appears to be dead and then comes back as well. And it's not just him. There's a number of different pictures in a number of different movies that kind of push the same kind of envelope that kind of go, oh, that's interesting. It's going to
give me an example.
Even in some of the X-Men, you have guys calling himself the I Am. One of the main characters in X-Men calling himself the I Am. And once again, the X-Men are going to come together, and then they will fight against him together as a nation, fighting against this outward threat coming within to stop what's going on and the wickedness going on. There's actually a movie called Legion as well. And in Legion, the angel comes down and so forth. And now Legion, once again, is fighting against God, who God is ultimately coming, and he's going to wipe everyone out. And there's going to be this baby, and this baby is going to ultimately save humanity. So once again, when you look at so many of the characters, even, it just looks like it's a conditioning aspect to get us ready to come together as one and fight against this foreign threat. And the foreign threat, when we read the book of Revelation, that it culminates in, that foreign threat ends up being God himself. But he's not a threat to those who are in him, the ones who know him. He's a threat to all sort of wickedness that has happened. And so there comes a time, and it's always interesting because I remember when I first came to Christ, and Bill Maher would say certain things, and he's like, one of the things, he would mock and say, why doesn't God deal with all these terrible things and the rapists and so forth? But this is a lot of times our understanding of wanting God to deal retribution on certain sins that we're like, these are really bad, right? Like, I can't wait till God wipes it all out. But it says in 2 Peter chapter 3 concerning his coming that he's not slow concerning his coming back for his bride, but he's patient because he's not willing that any would perish, but that all would come to repentance. And that verse means a lot to me because I praise God that Jesus didn't come back on January 18th, 2009, before I came to know him, because he's not just coming to wipe out the rapist. He's not just coming to wipe out even the thief. He's not just coming to wipe that out. There can be no hint of sin. And so all sin, all unbelief, all liars, everyone, And guess what? Right now, it's not like God is so slow. I wish he would get here. He's patient. He's patient with us, calling us to himself while we're too busy with all these distractions. God gave his only son to die for us, and people are so busy with everything else. And he goes, no, come to me. And I've given you plenty of time. I've given you plenty of things. And ultimately, that culmination is going to happen. Because it's kind of interesting in the book Second Thessalonians. It was one of the earlier letters written in the church by Paul in the New Testament. And in Second Thessalonians, you have a church that is being persecuted, and they're being ravaged. They're dying. It's a really sad thing that's going on. And they're like, God, when are you coming back for us? Like, when are we ever going to get this relief? And he says, you will get your relief when I come with my flaming arrows and deal retribution. And so for that believer, it's the tension that we live in. The tension that I live in is the fact that I want to be with Jesus forever. And I know, and in fact, it talks about the helmet of salvation, which is a promise of the Lord's return, that I know he came back the first time, he's coming back the second time. And I know for a fact he's coming back. But with that, it's a double-edged sword in the sense that I can't wait to be with Jesus forever. I can't wait for the friends that have gone on that love Jesus. I get to be with them as well, and we get to serve him forever. And all the evil is going to be gone. It says he will dry up all the tears. Right? There will be no more sorrow, no more pain, no more death. It says that's the last enemy. He's going to put to death. That'll be the last enemy. But in the same sense, he's patient. And so yes, my tension that I live with, that I want to be with Jesus forever. But I also remember that my neighbor doesn't know Christ yet. A lot of people don't know Christ yet, and I want them to know Christ yet. And I know that all of these things that I've talked about, everything, all the evils and stuff, that there's a time where it all gets put to an end, and there is a culminating factor, and that is the main difference between Jesus and everything else.
So on one point, I would agree with you totally when you're saying that all this is just a preparation, or all the indoctrination through movies, music videos, all that stuff, right? But here's the question. So all this that is happening, all this bad stuff that is happening is in the Western Hemisphere, right? The US, Canada, maybe Europe, right? UK, Germany, France, etc. But we have no idea what is happening, for instance, in Russia, in Japan, in Korea, Australia, Africa. We don't see anything like this from there. How is it possible?
Anything like evil happening in Russia and so forth?
Anything with the devil worshipping, all that stuff.
Well, yeah, they're actually in Africa, and I've gone. That's where I asked my wife to marry me. They're still practicing voodoo and so forth. Haiti is eating people right now. Their main leader is a guy named Barbecue. I mean,
oh yes,
yeah, you got voodoo going on in all sorts of places all over. You have the worship of the creation rather than the creator. And I think that when it comes to how something may manifest itself in terms of that wickedness, I think that a lot of times our parameters have gone so low that simply not worshiping the Lord is not a big deal to most people.
Yes.
It's just like, oh, it's okay. It's whatever, it's no big deal. They just believe differently than you. But it's not just believing differently. It is an affront to a holy God that died for his people. Like God sent his son to die for them. And they have we can look at Japan and so forth, and you see the suicide rate through the roof, and it
yes.
was finally seemed like it was going down. Then COVID happened, and you see that they have no purpose. I mean, it really is a heartbreaking thing. They have this group of men that they call herbivores. Has nothing to do with dietary reasons. It's because they have absolutely no attraction to women, but they're not homosexuals. All they do is work, and they live in
a box.
And they're just utilitarian, and it's kind of crazy because we see so much beauty in the world, and I really do believe a lot of the architecture today is specifically to push us towards communism. And there's not a bunch of beautiful, landscapes and so forth. Just look at all of it. The schools,
look at the McDonald's. 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
Some colorful buildings. Right now, it's like
they're going gray. Yeah.
Gray. Just That's it. That's McDonald's.
Yeah.
Where's the clown? Literally, where's the clown?
Yeah, we're the clowns now. And they have done a great job of making the cubicle-filled life to have no purpose. And that's exactly what it is. The colors are all supposed to be this way. The buildings are all hard-line structures. There's no beauty. It's one of the saddest things. And I believe beauty is objective, and because it ultimately comes from God himself. And when you look at the nature, when you look at a sunrise, when you look at a sunset, that is not this utilitarian, shut off and so forth. There is true and real beauty, and all of this stuff that we're seeing, the cubicles, the housing. I mean, it is sad. I saw this earlier, and it is so true. And I've worked in the public school system now for 15 years, and I went to public school my whole life. But the parallel between what it looks like at a school, how you are given certain times to go play in the sun, how you are given, what it looks like, even your food, how the slop is, it is exactly like a prison. It is a prison. And even the gates that have been put up at every school to get in or out of those schools.
But that's because of mass shootings.
That's what they say, but there was a lot less mass shootings prior, before those gates were all up. And so it's kind of interesting. And Clovis, in wrestling, we know that the Clovis area in California, by Fresno, it is very, 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 very good at wrestling and all sports. And there was a doctor named Dr. Buchanan, and they still name the biggest tournament in the country called the Doc B. It's the Doc Buchanan. And it was really interesting because he had a different philosophy with education, and he wanted the kids at school to be proud of their schools, and they'll stop tagging it, and they'll stop doing these things. They'll start getting better grades and so forth. And his entire idea came with let's have them have school pride by putting sports at the forefront, and they'll be battling against each other. And so this school, even though they're in the same city, will battle against this school. And they don't want to, trash their school because they have school pride and they want to battle against them. And he said, take down the cages, and now it'll be much better. And Clovis, that's a nice area compared to the surrounding Fresno, Madera area around them, and it absolutely worked. And I mean, obviously getting these kids involved in sports and achieving a goal. And I think the reason why sports and stuff help is because it gives them a purpose. Mm-hmm. And each one of us need a purpose.
For sure.
And so when I see Satan manifesting in a different way, making someone's life feel absolutely useless and that they are just a part of a scheme and part of some sort of matrix that they just follow in line and do what they're told, I think that itself is a perfect example of they are already in his hand, and it doesn't have to manifest in the same way that they're let's put on horns and have a bunch of sexual promiscuity. As long as you're too busy with your job, working 16 hours as a slave, as long as you're too busy to ever look up to the Lord, then that's totally fine as well.
And when you have nothing to do, when you have your free time, you have idle mind.
Oh, yeah.
Devil loves that.
Oh, absolutely.
So in Japan, there is the suicidal rate through the roof, right? They work till 80 years old. Just like you said, men, there are certain men that are asexual. They don't need women, and etc., right? And, small islands, boxes. Tokyo is overpopulated, if you want to say so. Millions and millions of people. You can't have a car. So I believe that's a very bad life over there. So then you've got North Korea, communist, China, communist, Russia, dictatorship, Iran. Then you got Africa, which is wild. In the 21st century, it's wild. Then you got Australia and New Zealand that went wild during the COVID times, right? Then you've got what? Then you've got Brazil, socialist. Argentina was socialist, I hope so, before Milei came in. Then you've got Colombia, all the drug stuff, Mexico, cartels, all that stuff. On the north of the US, you've got the Canada, which they're trying to pass the bill. You saw the bill they're trying to pass in regards to hate speech?
Yep.
Life sentence?
Life sentence.
Yeah. Life sentence for... And then there's the US. It's kind of one of the last beacons, one of the last places on earth where you have freedom of speech, freedom of choice, freedom of religion, if you say so, freedom of almost everything. That's the last thing.
Yeah.
If you lose this one, you're kind of done. There's nowhere to go. And I'm saying this because I came from Europe. I was raised and lived in Lithuania for 30 years, right? Then we lived in Spain for 2 years. That's a beautiful country, but it's a socialist country.
Oh, yeah.
The best place on earth that I have ever seen, even with all the drug problems, all that wicked stuff that's happening in the US, it's still the best country and the best place on earth. In the meantime, Americans, some certain groups hate this country.
Yeah.
But if you make pupils or students that like their schools, like their parents, like their families, they want to compete, family versus family in a basketball match, something like this, right? School versus school wrestling match, baseball match, etc. Then city versus city, state versus state. You love all that small stuff, bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You fight for your family, for your school, for your state, for your country, and you love the United States of America. But if you replace all that, if you remove the God from the school, if you remove all that stuff, you hate each other. I hate you, and we used to have a camaraderie in the school. Now we hate each other. We hate the opposite sex. Women hate men, men hate women. That's where we're going at. That's craziness. That's plan. That's like a masterpiece plan from all angles, just like you said, the architecture. You would never think of it, but once you see that 200 years ago, the architecture of street lighting, right? That was a masterpiece. Right now, it's just like this. That's it. The buildings meant something. They were some kind of statues. Right now, if you see the statues, what is that? That's misery. That's not art.
It's not.
It all comes to one puzzle. Puzzle is getting just piece by piece.
It stinks, because there is so much beauty in if we can at least both love our country.
Yes.
And it is a sad thing to watch people have such a hatred towards the very thing that allows them to voice that hatred, which is kind of crazy, when you really think about it, and it's like, man, you see some of these young people and you talk to them, and it's kind of interesting, being involved in the school system as long as I have been. And I remember when I was a newer coach, and I was pretty young, and I was a newer convert as well. And I remember a kid came in and we were talking. He's like, yeah, Planned Parenthood just came into the class and they told us they don't make any money off of abortions. And I was like, oh, now it's kind of funny thinking of that'd be the most ridiculous thing to say. How many of them shut down after Roe v. Wade? I wonder, because they didn't make any money. And I was blessed enough to have already heard that argument. And I said, hey, don't you know that they'll say things like that? But what happens is when a woman goes to a Planned Parenthood, she'll walk in, they'll take her temperature. So they say, oh, look, we actually checked her temperature. That's what we made our money off of. And then they'll check her weight and they'll say they made money off that. And so they'll perform all these actions and say, oh yeah, so what we're doing is not really for abortion. And then it was the old lie that they said, oh yeah, we give mammograms, and to find out that all they do is tell you a place you can go to go get mammograms, and really it's just an abortion mill. And I thought, wow, the fact that a propagandist could come into a classroom and just act like, well, this is normal. Let's hand out a bunch of condoms to high schoolers. I'm sure they'll keep them on. And, to propagandize, for abortion. I'll give you a condom, but if it doesn't work, don't worry, we'll help you.
Don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll be the ones that help you, and you don't even have to tell your parents. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you're like, what on earth? And as you talked about that us versus them ideology, that's exactly right. And TikTok and Twitter and Instagram, everyone has to have a contrarian opinion about every single thing. And if they don't have the best opinion that's different than someone else's, they're not going to get any likes and follows. So always trying to figure out how you could have a difference of opinion of the next person rather than examining each claim within its own context. Like that's one of the biggest things, and it's one of the reasons my wife and I, we switched over to what is known as Christian classical education. One of the reasons we did that is because of the way it forms the mind in their understanding, obviously memorization and reading and so forth early on, but then getting to a place of logic and actually understanding logic. I mean, when it came to Plato and Socrates, and even with Draco, with his laws, with the draconian laws and so forth, a lot of the argumentation in the Republic was, well, what is the best way to win a case? Is it with rhetoric? So whoever's just skillful in speech. Is it with money? Because that's typically who would win those cases. So as long as you had money. Or is it with logic and reasoning? And sadly enough, we've lost the logic and reasoning as the formidable opponent. And now it's not even rhetoric. It's just, it goes back to money. And what corporation, has enough money to get the right talking heads to say the right things. And so now you have young people who are following their favorite artists on Twitter. They're following them all over the place and getting whatever the opinions they want. And then you find out these artists are being pushed by lobbyists. And, now you have a situation where everyone's like, oh no, when Taylor Swift, endorses Biden, he's going to get all those Swifties to vote for them. And it is such a heartbreaking thing to realize how quickly that can happen and how easily people are influenced. And so the hatred of us versus them, rather than it being, oh, my favorite sports team is this team and that team, and guys hanging out and messing around and talking about their favorite team, but still loving each other. Now it's like, if you have any difference of opinion whatsoever, it's not even we can't really be friends. It's I hate you.
I hate you.
I hate you. And it's like, when did this happen? Where as soon as there was a difference of opinion, it's not like, oh, we just have a difference of opinion. It's I have to hate you, or you must hate me if you believe that. And it could not be further from the truth, and it's heartbreaking.
So a few months ago, we argued big time right here by the pool with the guy. So he was saying LeBron is the GOAT. I was saying MJ is the GOAT. We argued, but not even a fight. We don't hate each other. We just hang out yesterday with him.
Yeah.
Just he has his own opinion, I have my own opinion. He had his own arguments, I have my own arguments. So you saying that the propagandists go to school and say that abortions cost nothing, right? So, but they have a lot of clinics of that and etc. They make a lot of money of that right now. So gender transitioning facilities is the next big thing. There are a lot of them, and it's getting more and more in the States. And they're saying the same thing. It costs you nothing, right? Yeah. But it's not. How does this business survive? How do they make money for all the personnel, etc.? If that's for free for everyone who is willing to transition, that's not true. That's a lie.
It's not true at all. They're making money off these children, and it is so heartbreaking. I interviewed Dr. Walt Heyer. In fact, I was just with him last week as well. And he was one of the first sex changes. He was somebody who was deluded, and there was a doctor at that time, I believe in the 70s, that was trying to push this on people. Oh, you have a different gender identity and so forth. And the doctor's name, funny enough, is similar to the late actor. His name was Dr. Paul Walker. And what Walt talks about is the fact that every single person, and he runs an entire website called sexchangeregret.com, and it's a bunch of people who made the mistake, and now they're like, well, what am I anymore? And it is so sad to listen to him tell those stories. And he said that Paul Walker, the surgery that they started doing to transition, I hate even using that word because they're not transitioning anything, they're just mutilating children, but was actually a surgery for people with testicular cancer. For men with testicular cancer, it was the surgery that they would perform so that they wouldn't die. Yes. And he said none of those men all of a sudden became women because they had this surgery. And I was like, wow, that is really interesting. Of course they didn't. We know that. But it is a social contagion that is happening because so many of the young girls and young boys that are having these transitional issues are the ones that when I was in high school and a little bit before, we would have just called them gothic. They were into goth music. They were a subculture. And guess what? A lot of them just grew out of that eventually. Yes.
Boys were like girls alike with long hair.
Yeah. And the dark painted fingernails and and so forth. And so that same group of that subculture is now being told, oh, don't just color your hair or paint your nails. You need to mutilate yourself. You need to cut your breasts off. You need to do this, that, and the other. And it's like, are you kidding me? They are making life-altering decisions. They are stopping puberty. They are having them take puberty blockers. It is the saddest thing, and it is an attack, I believe, on the image of God. It's an attack on what Jesus said. They have been made male or female from the womb. There's no doubt about it. It's an attack on these children, and it ruins them. They will not be able to have kids later. And when you listen to the testimonies of those who made that mistake and then transition back, all of them were like, I would have grown out of this. Why did my mom and dad? But I remember hearing early on, and this changed my perspective on how easily somebody could be manipulated. There was a young girl, I'm not remembering her name, but it was one of the first shows I ever did on my show, because I listened to this speech. This young girl was detransitioning, and she had been convinced, and it was
girl to boy, boy to girl.
It was a girl who had transitioned to a boy. Now she was going back to being a girl. Her voice was still deep from all the hormones they had and testosterone, exactly. And she was talking, and they were literally outside of this hall, like trying to, like, no, don't let her talk. She's an 18-year-old girl. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And I'm listening to her talk, and she said that what happened to her were that older lesbians had talked to her on Tumblr. And I know Tumblr, I mean, I was like, I don't even remember using Tumblr ever. But I said it was very interesting, because she said they had saw her, and they kept basically saying, the reason you feel this way is because you're really a boy trapped in a girl's body. And so they discipled her in this way. And she immediately, as a young 13-year-old girl, started telling her parents this. This is what's going on. So she's being discipled online. Her parents don't know what's going on. She's being discipled into this. And she tells her parents, and her parents are acquiescing to everything. We'll get you whatever you want. We'll call you whatever you want. She said it did not matter what they did, that ultimately, if they even made the mistake of accidentally calling her by her birth name, she said she would be so enraged, even though her parents had done everything, got the hormones, got everything she wanted. If they made the mistake of accidentally doing it, that it got her so raged that she was ready to kill them. And I was like, that's the kind of thing that they foment on when they're manipulating them. And when I talk to Walt Heyer, because he's talked to thousands of those who have made the sex change regret, and he said 100% of them had some sort of traumatic event that took place. For him, it was his grandmother dressing him up in a dress, and then him being molested by someone else. And he said, if you think I'm the only one, and then they think there's something wrong with them. They think that there's something wrong with them because they got molested, so it's their fault. And so they're trying to figure this out. And ultimately, when they're trying to figure out what happened to me, rather than realizing somebody did a heinous evil to me, they think this is going to be the thing. If I could only, and they all regret it after. It doesn't change the suicide rate. They lie. It doesn't, because a lot of the highest rate of suicide right there. And then it does not change with getting the sex change. There's a video online of a woman at a city council talking about the trans genocide. But when you ask, like, well, where is this happening? Like, who's killing them? They don't have answers because it doesn't exist. And a woman just goes up there and screams. And this is the idea that ideas and words are violence. And so for them, when someone says, like, I disagree with you, that's a violent act. That's not just, I disagree with you on this. No, that's a violent act to them. And they're not being taught. They're being taught that that's the case. Not being taught, like, no, that's not the case. People can have disagreements and we can grow from it. And that's how we can actually get to some sort of synthesis here. But they're being taught, no, it actually is violence, and it's trauma, it's your parents, it's this, and it's crazy because the memory editing that takes place in some of these social sessions of, like, my father must have not really loved me, and so forth, or this person must have did this to me, because they're trying to find commonality with other people who have been hurt, and now that commonality is we have an enemy. and we need to go fight that enemy. And we're seeing it spill out in the blood of children. And this is the end game of what is going to come out of the lies, that you can't have a difference of opinion without free speech being in danger of, life in prison in Canada. And, this is the ultimate culmination of it, because when somebody looks at an Audrey Hale who, at the Covenant shooting, when somebody looks at the most recent shooting that just took place, so many online that are advocates, as they call themselves, are like, well, this is what happens, like instead of like, this is a tragedy, I can't believe this took place. This is basically a bunch of you cisgender white males getting what you deserve, losing your children, or whatever, thought process they have. And it's heartbreaking.
That's the act of violence. If you write this kind of comments, this is the act of violence.
Oh, absolutely.
You deserve your children to be killed because you're a white male or a white female. So one act of violence is to call you by your past name if you're transitioned, right? So when I was a kid, I was called an asshole every day at school. Hey, asshole. No problem. We're friends. But that's an act of violence? That's how we grew up.
Yeah.
So my theory is this. I believe that those who were bullied 20 to 30 years ago, now they are in the power. They got into power and they want revenge. Because when you watch those people, when you watch their faces, their bodies, their language, it seems like they were bullied big time, and they just want the revenge. They got into the power, and now what they're doing is just getting revenge for what they have experienced in their childhood. I believe so, but it seems like that.
Absolutely. I could see that in a heartbeat, and they're missing something, and they're trying to convey that, whatever they're missing, back to these children. And like you said, they're seeing these, the sports guy, the jock, and think about how many movies, were made about, the jock being a jerk to the kid who, is maybe he's into art or something, and now that kid gets the girl and the jock doesn't, right? Like that was the milieu of so many different films, in the 90s and 2000s. And there's always that chicken or the egg. Does the culture express what they see in movie, or do the films, do they express what they're seeing in culture? But I think a lot of times, because you're trying to express a worldview, I think a lot of times when you look at it, it is ultimately the culture being affected by the things they're meditating on day and night. And so if they're meditating on, the films of, the little guy getting this and the little guy getting that, and it's really this jock's the jerk, and all of that, that's a mentality that sticks with people. Everyone remembers a great movie that they saw. Everyone remembers a great song that changed their mentality or their heart, or when they were going through a breakup, or with a song they were listening to when their wife and I's first kiss, or whatever it is. Everyone has these things, and these memory banks go in. And so when you have somebody who, grew up and could not stand, that they were getting the raw end of the deal in their mind, and now they're the ones in power. They were the ones paying attention in class. Now, it can get a little dicey.
But it all comes to the family, right? So for instance, when my son goes to school and I find out that he bullies someone, I'm going to talk to him. That's not good. But if I'm an asshole and I'm saying, my son bullies someone, yeah, good for you, son. Yeah, do it even more. Do it more harsh, right? Bully someone. That's fucked up.
It's no good. Yeah, you cannot.
It all comes down to family.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And it's kind of interesting because Black Lives Matter, when they put out their charter, what they said they were trying to do, number one, was to eliminate the nuclear family. And that was number one. I mean, they were doing witchcraft.
How will this help with police brutality?
It doesn't. It ruined. It makes it worse. The whole thing. But like you said, with the family, and it's kind of interesting because Satanist Aleister Crowley, he had a poem called "Family: Public Enemy Number One," and it really is. And even going back to some of the movies, think about this: like so many of the movies were people in the Midwest and they got to get out of the small town away from their family so they can make it big out in LA, right? So many of the movies are like, I just got to go. I got to go get that. I got to go, chase after this. Why? So how many girls came out from the Midwest and from these places, came out to LA, end up as a server, getting passed around by a bunch of guys and never make the stardom that they thought was going to make them have some sort of fulfillment. And instead of having the people around them that love them, and to know them and that care about them. And when they fall on hard times, one of the saddest things about so much of the homelessness that I see are people that, have fallen on hard times and they've burned every bridge with their family because they can. My wife and I took in one of my best friends from high school, and I used to have a lot of partiers. One of my best friends from high school, my wife and I took him in after he had thrown his whole entire family away, 3 beautiful children, a wife that loved him, all that to use drugs on the street. And I grabbed him, we picked him up, we took him out of off the streets. I literally was climbing in homeless encampments, grab him, and he got to have his first Christmas. We literally did our entire family Christmas at my parents and my wife's parents, and we let him kind of take over the house with his old family, and they had Christmas for the first time in years. And it was a beautiful thing, like, wow, praise God. And I said, hey, I want to get you right. I want to help you out. I was teaching at a rehabilitation center. I can take you anytime you want. Or if you got your own business, we'll try to make sure you get back on your feet. You got free rent here. You're fine. And, sadly, one night I came home. I'm like, hey, I understand. And it's been about 3 months. I said, I understand how long it takes. I was a drunkard, and I know how long it takes to get off. It's been that time, and this is going to be it. You're either going to stop using, and he had done some meth too, and said, you're either going to stop using. I was like, I'll still love you. I'll still bring you food on the street anytime you want, home cooked meal every night if you want. I was like, but you can stay here and get right, and you come to church with me, or you're going to have to go back to the streets.
So he was doing drugs?
Yeah, he was secretly, and I realized it, and I was like, okay, this is your last chance. And so I said, I'm going to go take a shower, and then I'm going to go to Bible study. If you're still here, great. Then let's get right. Let's do the thing. If you're not, I totally understand. Just text me. I'll bring you some food. And when I left, he was gone. Brought him food a couple times. No big deal, But I posted pictures when I was in Israel with my family, and he saw we were out of town, and he came back to the house, moved in a bunch of the homeless of Simi Valley into my house. So much so that they had to write the password for the internet on the wall because so many people were going in and out. And I ended up getting a lot of stuff stolen. I came home, found out what happened. And funny enough, I even went to teach at the rehab right after. And I was telling the story, and at this rehabilitation center, you'd have a blue shirt if you've been there at least 30 days and have a gray shirt if you've been there 2 weeks or less because you're just coming off drugs. So just so you know, if they're not able to pay attention, that might be why. And so I'm sitting there, and one of the gray shirts after the teaching comes up, and I tell the story about what happened, and he goes, so that was your house? And I was like, yeah, that was my house, And so I thought, man, I don't understand it. How could someone throw this all away, like just for drugs, all that stuff? But what was interesting was finding out that so many of the people on the street actually have people that would take them in right now.
Yeah.
But the difference is I don't sleep a lot. I work, all the time, but I'm not a big sleeper, but I still sleep more than a meth addict. And so when my friend is walking around at 3 a.m, he can hang out with a friend over here. He can go sleep with one of the homeless girls over here. He can, take a hit over here, take a drink over here, take a this.
There are kids in your home.
Exactly. There are kids at my house, all that stuff. So, I started to realize right away, first of all, with all of the handouts that have been given them, they do not need a family anymore to watch over them, to help them, to get them up on their feet, to get them a job. They don't need that. Some of them are given drugs, by the way. I mean, methadone if they want. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. All the food, all they're doing is hanging out. And guess what? Now, instead of the family being that safety net to fall on in hard times, it's now the government, and the government just gives, and they just care if you vote for them.
Helps.
Yeah, helps.
That's called help.
Yeah, you know what's weird when I go to Yosemite and stuff? Basically, it's like, please don't feed, the wild animals.
Yes.
Otherwise, they'll get used to it and they won't be able to hunt or anything like that. That's literally what they've done to so many people here. I mean, we care for as many as we can. I have a big heart for the homeless. But even in the Bible, we have what were called gleaning laws. And those gleaning laws were for men in the Old Testament, or families in the Old Testament, where they were not supposed to grab from the edges of their crop, so that those who were more poor and destitute could come and glean from the crop. But they still had to work to get it. They didn't just have it handed to them. And sadly enough, that's what's going on. And even in the New Testament, there were people that were like, well, Jesus is coming back, so I don't have to work. And Paul's like, if you don't work, you can't eat. That's literally what he says in 1 Thessalonians. If you don't work, you can't eat. You can't be late. There's no such thing as a lazy Christian. You're not allowed to be a lazy Christian. We work for the glory of God, and the work that we do is not just for our boss, but for our King.
Now imagine these three letters: UBI, Universal Basic Income. If they implement this, we're doomed.
Amen. Yeah, we would
You
absolutely
just
be doomed.
sit at home because you're a cashier, you're a driver, etc. Right now you're being replaced by the AI, but you're being given $2,100 a month. Idle mind, idle hands. What do you do with this money? We saw that what people are going to do with the money that they're being handed during the COVID, right?
Absolutely.
The checks, they went and buy some very crazy, stupid stuff. I'm not talking even about the MacBook or an iPad camera or iPhone. Gucci, Louis Vuittons, etc.
Yeah, because I never had it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
No use. These are just sneakers. $2,000 for a sneaker. You could buy a food for a month. That is what you were supposed to buy. I view it this way. Let's say I'm some kind of an evil. I'm Satan. I'm the devil, right? I'm watching the population. I'm watching the people, and I see this country, this group of people, and they're doing fine. What should I do? What can I do for them to get corrupted? Maybe I should try to throw in some kind of alcohol. Boom. 10% are done, right? Alcoholics. They're not corrupted. Maybe I should throw in some promiscuity for the women. Boom, 10% out. Drugs, out. No, the drugs, the usage is not that big. Okay, maybe opioids. They're throwing all that stuff just right into society. Social media, OnlyFans, pornography, all that stuff. That's what it is. We're just being corrupted day after day after day after day. And the new stuff just comes out every decade. Fentanyl 20 years ago wasn't a big thing. And it's FDA approved. That's a drug.
Yeah.
But right now, that's an epidemic. 20 years ago, that was an opioid epidemic with antidepressants and all that stuff. Right now, it's a fentanyl epidemic. At the same time, pornography epidemic, for sure, big time. OnlyFans, promiscuity, all that stuff. Plan B, the genocide of people, the abortions. It's going through the roof.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, it's like you're watching it happen, and it's really hard to watch. It really is
When
sad.
you pay attention.
When you're paying attention, it is really sad. And the one good thing I've seen now that I was actually talking about this with someone who pointed out something similar, that it does seem that, because I have about 40 wrestlers that I'm coaching right now, it seems like there is a little bit of revert back, that some of these young men are seeing all the nonsense and going, oh, I don't want any part of that.
Men are becoming more conservative.
Men are becoming more
and
conservative.
girls are becoming more what? Liberal,
yeah. What's crazy is they did a study on birth control for women. And basically one of the things they did was they had women take birth control and then look at images of men, where these men, while they were on birth control, were more, some were more feminine featured and so forth with their dress, and then more masculine. And while they were on the birth control, they all picked the more feminine men. But once they were off the birth control, they picked the more masculine of men, which I found to be very interesting. And the same kind of thing happens in their ideology when they're looking at men. They're like, wait a second, these men are actually being men. They're not painting their fingernails and doing their thing. And it is very interesting to watch all of this, female empowerment. But sadly for them, instead of empowerment being empowered to raise a family and be an awesome wife and to children and a mother and all this, instead of that being something that they look at, they frown on that. They push that down. They mock that. But yet society tells them, yes, go get more money through OnlyFans. Go get through more money by selling yourself on the internet and so forth. This makes you a strong woman. And really what's happening over and over again is these women are being used and abused by men. The men may get older and now they're more financially stable, and then they just marry a younger woman who's not into all that. And so the women are getting the raw end of the deal again.
Yes.
Over and over again with a bunch of losers. I mean, literally, like with nothing but a bunch of losers who use them up and threw them off to the side. And they're calling this female empowerment. It's not female empowerment. They're disintegrating womanhood. They're killing it. And they're basically saying, when you look at so many of the attributes that they talk about modern feminism, so many of the attributes are basically, you're not a real woman unless you're a man. And it makes no sense. It makes no sense. But every attribute they're trying to find is an attribute that is consistent with some sort of male figure. You got Beyonce singing about how she needs to be like a man with her, when it comes to dating and so forth. And that's not the only person singing that. And it's just a heartbreaking thing to watch over and over again. As a father of 2 daughters, like to see what the culture has tried to express to them, what true womanhood is, when, praise God, they have a mother that is an actual woman and a mother who is taking care of them and a mother who is involved in their life. But
that generation is dying.
It is dying. It is dying. But I will say, and it could die completely, so I could be off on this. Talking to some of the young men today, a lot of them are seeing the futility in it all. And when you have, entire articles, written about like, why do we need men? Like, why do we need this? Why do we need that? All the nonsense that they put out. And the guys are like, oh, okay.
How about we built everything because we're just stronger? All the skyscrapers, all the roads, we built that.
Yeah.
But not for ourselves, for you, for family, for the society.
Amen.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
Why do we need men for?
It's pretty sad. One of my favorite books that's out there right now is by a professor, Nancy Pearcey. She wrote the book, The Toxic War on Masculinity. And it is such a phenomenal book because it stamps out so much of the lies that were being told about masculinity and the lies that were being told. She said, I don't believe in a such thing as toxic masculinity because masculinity in and of itself is not toxic. And one of the things she actually talks about is what changed in the household after the Industrial Revolution. And what was interesting is after the Industrial Revolution, now men were completely outside of the house rather than raising the children. They weren't involved at all in raising the children.
Yes.
And she said that was the biggest change in society. And she said one of the greatest things that happened during COVID was fathers actually going back into the home, and many of them spent time with their kids that they had never spent. And they didn't realize, like, wait a second, like I like spending time with my kids. And the whole thing, like as a man, like your children, your goal should be for your children to want to follow your lead.
Yes.
And they should watch you
yes.
and actually live life with you.
Yes.
They should know, I remember my wife, she nannied back when we were first together, first going out. And she said that one of the boxing coaches was there at the house that she nannied, and she was talking to him, and she's like, I teach this one kid, and the moms are lesbians, And she came to him, she said, hey, I'm having a real struggle with our son when it comes to going to the bathroom, because he's wondering, he keeps getting mad because I'm telling him he needs to use a tissue when he goes to the bathroom. And he was like, no, that's not supposed, he's not supposed to use tissue, and that sounds like, oh man, that's so crazy that would happen. But that's the reality. Men are supposed to teach men.
And that's just one of many points.
Oh, that's just one. I can't even imagine some of the other stuff that he was not getting taught properly. And this is the case. God designed it for us to have a mother and a father. And guess what? That's exactly how God designed it. And he wants us, our boys should be looking up to us.
Fun.
And you should live a life that should be looked up to. When you are the person, when you look at your son, and I pray this would be something that would deter people from getting themselves involved in pornography. How do you feel if you would walk in and your son watching that? And imagine that when you're doing that he would catch you in the act of doing it as well. So you would say, and care enough to say, I don't want to be involved in that stuff. I don't need that sick, disgusting stuff because I don't want my children watching it. And so often, and I remember my wife gives advice for women, when it comes to who they would marry, and when one of the questions she said she asked herself as well prior to being with me or anything, she was telling someone and giving advice, and she was also trying to take it herself, which was, I just kept thinking, what would happen if I died? Would this man that I'm with raise my children to worship the Lord and to follow Christ? Would they do that? And if your answer is not unequivocally yes, then what are you really doing? Like, if you can't trust that spouse to do that, what are you really doing? And for men, really, I want to make sure I live an example that my children can look at and say, I want to be like that. And that's my job, because I'm supposed to reflect my God. And when I reflect my God properly, my kids have a better understanding and a greater reflection of who their Father in heaven is. And so that's my ultimate goal. And this is being pushed aside, that the man, they don't really know. And look at the sitcoms, man. The father's the dumb one. The mom knows all the stuff. The dad's just an idiot doofus. And it's like, this is not an accident, man. We're telling everyone that dad's just too dumb. He's just too busy with life. All he wants is his beer and his football. Leave him alone. Don't bother him. I'm like, one of my favorite things is my kids jumping on me when I come home. That is like, I could fail at a lot of things, but I love the fact that when I come home, my kids are excited to see me. And we have those conversations and those talks, and I get to raise my kids in the admonition of the Lord. And it's not fake, it's not phony, it's who we really are. And I know what nominal, name-only Christianity can do to a person's mind as well. And that's actually one of the most interesting takes in the book, is how poorly men who are fake and phony at the things that they're doing, how poorly they do when it comes to all the statistics as well.
And the Christianity survived for minimum 2,000 years, right? Since Christ's birth. So time proved that's a good thing. The all new modern stuff is just 1, 2, 5 to 10 years old, max. So in regards to women, I believe they were so tricked, because 50 years ago, they were supposed to marry a guy, a good guy, to raise their children and not to work at all. At work. Not having a job. If they wanted to, they did that. But if they didn't want, one man could work and provide for the whole family, right? Now, they have no options. They have to work. In a household, there has to be a husband and a wife both working their asses off 40 to 50 hours a week. That's the only way you can afford food and shelter. They were tricked.
Yeah, and I like how you said that they were tricked. And we live in Southern California, so we understand what it's like, what rent is like, what buying a house is like. And what's sad is you used to be able to run the house off of one income. And then, of course, they told the wives, like, oh, well, if you just worked a little bit, now you can buy a little bigger house, right? And now it's mandatory. If you're going to purchase a home in Southern California, you better both be working. And your kids better get raised by someone else, by the government. And what's crazy is, I think Satan has done a really good job. And I don't think it's sin for women to work. I don't want anyone to ever think that. But what Satan has done a really good job at is now you have men going to work, and instead of working alongside other men as both trying to achieve goals together, they're working alongside women.
That's a good
Right?
point.
And not only are they working alongside women, they're spending 40 to 60 to 80 hours with a woman who is not their wife, talking to them about things you don't even have time to talk to your wife about. And where is the wife? Working with other men that are not. And so now you have a bunch of married people acting unmarried with opposite sex all the time. And guess what? Infidelity in the workplace. Now entire families are ruined. And it's run by the government anyways, because not only are they dropped off at school at 7:30 in the morning, they usually have an after-school program, and they don't see them until it's time to maybe eat dinner and say goodnight. And most families don't even do that together anymore. And
50% divorce rate says it all.
oh, you got it.
50%.
Yeah.
Like, if you would know that, for instance, if you would take a chance of only 50%, you wouldn't even start it. 50%.
Yeah. Oh, it's true.
I'm gonna go to Vegas to win some money. In your mind, you're like 90%. I'm gonna win something. But if you were told that it's 50-50, which is not in Vegas, but if you were told 50-50, no way. There's a 50% chance I lose the money. But when you marry someone, you got 50-50.
Yeah. 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 It's a sad statistic. And I know a lot of that, is from, basically some of those numbers are because people are recurring. It's the same person who's getting married 3, 4, 5 times. But it is true. And the laws and how much it helps someone else getting divorced financially. Somebody was bragging about a number. Hey, guys, if you're a single woman, you can own a home. In fact, more single women own houses than single men. But they're not remembering that that's because the single women are buying a house and owning a house with the money from the divorce.
Yeah.
Where the
men broke.
The men lose it all. And sadly enough, it becomes just another contract. In fact, the OnlyFans, not just OnlyFans, but she's a popular porn star, Mia Khalifa, was like, marriage is just a certificate.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, marriage is a covenant between two people. It said, we're going to do this together from death. What death will do us apart, neither sickness or in health, we're going to be together. We're going to go through the thick and the thin of this thing. And we are going to have children, and we are going to bless those children. And that's what makes up a real society. Not just making money because you shake your butt on a camera, not just making money because you'll sleep with whoever you want, but actually it's for a purpose. Like it's kind of interesting. I think about even when it comes to like a great sunset, the one thing you want to do is share that with someone. If I eat a good restaurant, I'm hoping to eat right after this and eat some sushi. And if it's a good place that I go to, the first thing I want to do is share that with someone else. Like so many people, they're so much about themselves. And if I could just line my pockets a little more, man, that is not what we've been created for. We're here, and we are here to share with one another. I see beauty, or if I eat something that tastes good, I want to tell other people about it.
Sharing knowledge.
Amen. 100%. When you learn something, that's one of the things that I do in my studies. When I learn something, I go and tell my wife, hey, check this out. I just learned this. And she does the same thing. Some of the stuff I've said here is simply from stuff my wife saw on a show and was like, hey, Chad, did you hear this? And I'm like, I got to research that. That's great. Sharing knowledge, having conversation. This is such a beautiful thing. I love it. And now everyone's in their phone. Go to a coffee shop, which used to be like, go to a coffee shop, go meet someone. I used to love seeing right next to my house when I would walk. My dad would be like, hey, can you go pick up donuts? Go to the donut shop. And there'd be 6 older guys having a conversation. And guess what? That's gone now. Everyone's on their phone. They're just sitting there looking at the next thing and just gathering information so that they can maybe argue with somebody on the internet that they'll never see face to face.
Hey, but if Mia Khalifa says that marriage is just a certificate, we gotta believe her. She's the one. She's the Messiah, bro. So for thousands of years, the marriage was the thing. But if it's nothing into comparison with the Mia. She's amazing. She's so talented. She's so wise. That's just a certificate, yeah.
It's sad
Let's
though.
see what she's up to when
it.
she's 60.
Oh yeah.
Let's just wait.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
100%. See what happens. And you know what's interesting is Halsey is an artist that had talked about, she's very pro-abortion, which I found was interesting with these statements, because she got pregnant and was having a child, and she had already won some Grammys and stuff. And she said, you couldn't believe the pressure that I was under. People were like, do you realize what you've done? Like, you could have made how many more albums in that 9 months? You probably could have made 2 more albums. You could have done this. You could have won more awards. You know what she said? And it's something that's so true. She said, I can't hug those awards at night.
Sure.
And it's hard for people to understand that, but it is true. You can't hug those awards at night. You can't embrace them. And once they're up on the shelf, that's it. You forget about them. What year was that I won that? What year was that? It's a heartbreaking thing. And it's like, man, if more people would understand that perspective, and more people would realize, like, these goals that you're going after, they're so monumentally useless. Like, I've been a wrestling coach. I've seen guys hit the height of the heights and all that stuff. And all it is a memory. In 1 month, it's gone. And it's like, well, what'd you accomplish? That's awesome. Great job. I'm working on the next kid now. Let's see if he can do it. And then it's gone. And then the next one, and then the next one. It doesn't even matter. It does not matter. Nobody, unless you have some sort of job where you're working in sports, you don't know who won the World Series in 2008. You don't know who beat who in the Super Bowl in 2014. You don't know, and more yet, you don't care. It doesn't affect your life, but
Absolutely.
It felt really important at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you won the gold medal at the Olympics, you still bring the medal to your home to show to someone, hey, son, take a look at this. Or, hey, son, before you were born, I used to be a wrestler. Yep. Look, do you have any accomplishments? Oh, come on. Let me show you. I've got this medal, this championship. But you still have to brag about it to someone. Yep. And children, wife, friends, your peers, someone. But if you're alone, if you're just lonely as hell, that's a misery. That's a very bad life.
Oh, it's horrible, and I've seen it, and it is one of the saddest things when you talk to somebody, and there are plenty of people I've heard say this, but something similar. And it's like, don't meet your heroes, because a lot of times you'll be disappointed, man, because you're like, oh wow, and you're like all excited, like, dude, I can't believe I get to meet him. I've watched him. I've followed his career. I've done this, and then you meet him, and you go, oh man, like, they're not what I expected.
Yeah.
They're not what I expected.
By the way, speaking of music, so I'm so happy that there are these guys like Jelly Roll, right? Which are so popular right now, and they speak the truth. They worship God. They sing about God, and he's getting a lot of eyeballs. I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot of that kind of music getting back to the stage, and a lot of people are going to listen to that kind of music, because I believe people are waking up. So a lot of people that liked rap music for decades, once they go into the lyrics, they're like, oh, like, whoa, bitch, like all that stuff. Women are nothing, money, drugs, all killings. That's the bad stuff. And then there comes the guys like Jelly Roll, all those artists that sing the truth, they sing about the God, the Jesus Christ, all that. So, Chad, I had the pleasure talking to you. Really, I truly enjoyed this podcast. But I have the last question on the podcast, which is always the same. So let's have 2 assumptions with you. Assumption number 1 is the President of the United States is the most powerful human being on planet Earth, right? Assumption number 2 is you become one. Once you become the President of the United States, Secret Service comes to you and says, hey, Chad, we congratulate you. We love you. You're the president now. We're Secret Service. We know all the answers in the world. You ask us, we give you the honest and true answer. We know everything. What would be your first question?
Man, I feel like I probably am giving the generic answer that everyone else.
Not the aliens.
Not the aliens, okay.
The most generic is aliens. The most common question is aliens, whether they exist.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of events that have taken place that I would really want to know about. I think I would want to know everything about the JFK assassination. I think that would be probably number one. And I would like to see the moon landing. Just, how did you film it? All the fun stuff. Like, how did this actually work? I need to
Where
to
was
know.
the studio based?
Yeah. How did you do that? I think I would ask. I think I would ask those two questions, and obviously for my own inquiry, but I believe, the Bible says in Ephesians 6:12 that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, rulers of the darkness in heavenly places. And so when it comes to that, I know that government officials and so forth, I do believe that they, whether some know or not, have nefarious reasons for doing things that they've done. And I think getting it down to know whether or not those things happen, like the JFK, even, I'd love to have the full report on what happened on 9/11. I'd love to have those sorts of things, because everything's going to be revealed eventually. And I can't put my hope that one person is going to be the one that gets that revealed. But I do know that people should know why their government acts.
So you would expose it?
Absolutely.
As a president?
Absolutely.
You would do a press conference and say whatever you've been told, the truth?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to give me some really good reason why you would not want that exposed, especially with the JFK, and everything. You'd have to give me some really good reasons why I would not want people to know some of the stuff that their government has lied to them about.
Because you're going to point at the public enemy number one.
Yeah.
Who killed the most popular president, I believe, in the history of the U.S.
Probably, yeah.
Chad, thank you for your time. I believe these conversations are more important than everything that has been done before, because this year especially, because we have the elections in the US, we have the elections in Russia, in more than 45% of all the population in the world is going to vote this year. So in my mind, this year is super important. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for coming this way. And I would like to just say, God bless you. God bless all your 4 children. God bless your wife and all your family and your peers and the loved ones. Thank you for coming, bro.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you.